Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Selectmen's meeting for Tuesday, January 20th. We are going to head right into executive session at 6:30. So I'll make a motion that we enter into executive session to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with union personnel or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with union personnel, the fire department contract. We'll finish executive session and come out to regular session at 7 p.m.
Second.
All those in favor? Roll call?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. We'll see you in a half hour. Good evening. Welcome back to the Selectmen's meeting for Tuesday, January 20th. I'll go through our agenda. 7 p.m. citizens input. Topics not reasonably anticipated by the chair 48 hours in advance of the meeting. 7:05 Selectmen's update. 7:15 p.m. public hearing, NPS LLC. Discussion and vote Taylor Swift concerts, July 24th and 25th, 2015, from 5 p.m. to 11:15 p.m. At 7:25, the board will discuss the spring warrant articles. At 7:55, Sharon Wasson, our town planner, will come to discuss the commuter rail project and then also the 40B project on Fisher Street that's proposed. And at 8 p.m., Bill Keegan will provide us with a town manager update. John, can you lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, being around 7 p.m., is there anyone here for citizens' input? Come on up. If you could give your name and address, please.
Sure. My name is Brian Murphy. I'm actually not a resident of Foxborough. I'm a resident of Boston. I am currently an employee at Patriot Place, and I just wanted to come today to provide my input on the potential impact of bringing the MBTA commuter rail to and from Foxborough on a daily basis. Quick background on myself. I'm a 2013 college graduate, and I recently moved back here from school in North Carolina. I'm actually a local boy and grew up the next town over in Norfolk. And I was given the fortunate opportunity to work at Patriot Place, and have since moved into Boston with my newly engaged fiance, and the two of us, she works in the city and I work out in Foxborough. So every day I'm faced with the reverse commute to and from the town. And while it's not difficult in regards to traffic, it can be a challenge. I have about a 50-minute commute to work every day, and the thought of being able to take the train to work on a daily basis would not only make my life significantly easier, but would make numerous employees and patrons of the property's lives incredibly easier on a daily basis. While I'm young and wanted to give living in the city a try, at some point I do see myself wanting to settle down in a town like Foxborough, somewhere in this area, at which point the ability to commute to the city is extremely appealing to myself, and I think it can have a very, very valuable impact on this town, as well as the surrounding towns and patrons of Patriot Place.
Great. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else for citizens' input? Okay. All right. I'll give a brief Selectmen's update. I just want to say congratulations to the Patriots on their win of the AFC Championship and wish them the best of luck at the Super Bowl. I was lucky to be at Sandra Herman's retirement party on Friday night and got to see an actual Super Bowl ring because one of her friends used to work for the Patriots, and it's really impressive, so wish you the best of luck with that. Congratulations to Sandra on her retirement. Party was great. Bill was a great master of ceremonies, so did a good job.
Kind of fumbled my way through it.
It was fun. Also, I wanted to congratulate Bill on being nominated to the board of the MIAA for the Health Advisory Group. It's a very prestigious appointment, and we're very proud.
Well, thank
Congratulations.
you. Appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. So it being 7:15, we have a public hearing, NPS LLC, Discussion and vote on Taylor Swift concerts for July 24th and 25th of this year. Yeah. Ginny, can you read the notice, please?
I'm going to read the hearing notice. Board of Selectmen, acting as the local licensing authority pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 140, Section 181, and Section 183A, and Chapter 136, Section 4, Town of Foxborough Revised General Bylaws, Article 5, Section 6, and also Stadium Rules and Regulations, will conduct a public hearing on Tuesday, January 20th, 2015, beginning at 7:15 p.m. in the Foxborough High School Media Center to review the applications submitted by NPS LLC for the Taylor Swift concerts. This event is proposed for Gillette Stadium. This application for this event is on file at the Office of Selectmen. All interested parties are welcome to attend.
Welcome. Would you like to just give your names, please?
Sure. Jess Enos with Gillette Stadium.
Kathy Donigan.
Hi, Kathy.
Voice amongst the missing, right?
And Joel Angelico, 92 South.
Joe, welcome from the Stadium Advisory Committee, all right? So Jess, do you want to give us some
Sure.
background?
So we're applying for Taylor Swift. She's going back out on another national tour this summer. It's the 1989 World Tour. We're asking for Friday and Saturday, July 24th and 25th. Similar to the One Direction show that we had sat before you with a couple of months ago. It's a 5 p.m. start time. We're not asking for a specific lot time because, as with all of our shows, we'll work with public safety officials as the date nears to establish a time that works for everybody. We are going to operate a pickup and drop-off location in South Retail, similar to One Direction, and also it's the same protocol that we used for Taylor Swift in previous years. Her ticket prices range from $65 right up to $250. The vast majority of the stadium is all reserved. There is a small GA section, a little bit less than 2,000 capacity at the very front of the stage on the floor. Everything else is reserved seating. We do anticipate a full stadium show both nights, so close to 55,000 in attendance. It hasn't been set yet. She hasn't gone out on any dates yet, although she will have had over a dozen by the time she gets to us. We do expect her to have a pretty extensive production setup, and anybody who has been to her shows at the stadium before know that she really sort of rolls into town with almost more of a Broadway show than a standard concert. So we definitely will have a full load-in schedule. We will anticipate the use of pyrotechnics. We're looking at another production sort of on the scope and scale of what we've seen from her in the past. So we are using Al Dotley, like we do for all of our concert production. He's produced her 2 shows, the 2 separate engagements that she had with us 2 previous years. So we've certainly got our arms around her as an artist and sort of the demographic that she brings and the level of production that she brings to the stadium as well. So we're really looking forward to it. It's been interesting to sort of watch her career trajectory, being that Gillette Stadium was the first NFL stadium that she performed at. So,
Great. Thank you. Any questions for Jess? Joel and Kathy, do you want to comment?
Okay. The only thing that the stadium, well, first of all, it took 3 of us to replace George Bell tonight, so, and Mike's in the background
Be
here.
impressed.
So
Okay.
we figured we'd put that on public record.
We'll let him know.
But George is on the road. So we met as a group, and the only things that we would like to highlight is a couple, and Jess has already done the one with Al Dotley being the liaison of production sound, which is great for all of us. And the shows are sold out, which is another good thing for the town of Foxborough. We anticipate that this crowd will be a little older than the crowd of last year, although really don't see it to be an issue. As we state in the minutes, it's 20s to 30s and mostly women. But we'll see how that plays out. But public safety, be it the 2 chiefs, and didn't seem to think that would be an issue. And the stadium will accommodate the whole porta potty setup as they have in the past. There is also going to be some work done, I guess, on North and Beach Streets, where there's going to be signs being put up for no parking, tow zone, no standing, because I guess we're having some issues there with people needing rides or wanting to have rides, and just got to keep the people moving around. And then we, as always, will be on hand as members of the Stadium Advisory Committee to observe what's happening at the concert, and we do that at our concerts, so, and staff the hotline for any kind of complaints that come in, and move it to appropriate people in the town.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Question?
Yeah, just the general admission section, 2,400 people right down in front of the stage. Do they have seats or are they standing?
No, it's just standing, so there aren't any seats at all in that space.
Okay.
It's just surrounded by mojo barrier, which is a special type of barrier that allows for crowd surges without ever having any issues with crushing. It gives to a certain extent, so there isn't anything in that space other than just Terraplast field.
Yeah.
And
Is this
barrier.
new or has this been done at her concerts before?
No, every show she's always had a small GA space, yeah.
Okay, never any issues with it?
No,
Okay.
no, luckily no.
In the taxi access, is that specific to just this concert?
Nope, we're going to continue to use
Continue
that
doing that,
setup that we started last year because it's done wonders in sort of alleviating some of the congestion that we had seen on North Street. So we'll continue to allow taxi and livery service up and down North Street.
Okay. Any questions?
Is there going to be a special admission section for the general admission? Or can they go to any gate?
It'll most likely be the Patriot Place gate only, because that's where all of the field level seats are. It sort of helps keep the crowd flow smooth down in that plaza space. So I don't know, right now it hasn't been confirmed, but in the past when we typically have a field seating area that has a GA component, all of those seats, both the GA and the fixed seat locations, will just come in at that Patriot Place gate, which is the one that's in between the pro shop and the ticket office.
Any questions, Jenny?
Yeah, I just had a question about, going back to the annual town, I spoke to Bill about this earlier in the afternoon. Going back to the annual town meeting, in Article 25, there was an overtime fine schedule as part of that warrant article, which was passed by town meeting. The warrant article went to the Attorney General's office once it went through town meeting, and it was returned back to the town saying that we could not, that Attorney General wanted us to delete that from the warrant article, the schedule, the fine schedule, because we couldn't fine anyone over $300 or something
Right,
like
the
that. There was a
maximum fine under a bylaw is
Right,
$300.
right. There was a
the state
specific
statute.
reason why it was rejected by the Attorney General. However, I think we had Bill had presented it in in his town manager's report. We also got an email explaining it. And I thought when Bill had explained it to us in his town manager report, we had discussed that, well, if it didn't go through, so it's not part of the regulation, but we would still like to see that schedule apply to applications for events, meaning all events. So I was under the impression that it was going to be part of the application from then on. And I was surprised. I read it 3 times. I was surprised there was no mention of it. So my question is, to Bill, or to all of us, can this be applied right now as a condition of the license, this in going forward, or do we have to update the regulations? With the idea is the fine schedule will be part of the regulations going forward.
I think the conversation I had with Gina this afternoon was that in order to just attach it to this particular request, because it's not in your regulations right now, I think you need to amend your regulations to include that. What's happened is that this schedule, I think process-wise, I think it's a better process to do it that way, and I said that to Ginny, that that you should amend your schedule to include the penalty clause, which, by the way, was supported by town meeting, and so there was no question about that. The way it actually works best is the same way it's being done in Mansfield, which is, it's part of the licensing procedure that they do, and they attach it as part of that, as opposed to actually making it a bylaw. So, for whatever reason, it was proposed as a bylaw the last time, and by doing that, you actually limit yourself in terms of what you can actually charge for a penalty. So, as a result, if you do attach a part of the license request, you can enforce the penalty the way you want to enforce it. But I think you really should amend your regulations to reflect that, as opposed to just instituting it into a license.
But
So what do you recommend? Should we amend the regulations and then come back and approve this with the schedule attached?
are,
Well,
when I talked to, because I had to prepare the language for the motion,
yeah.
and Bill Casparer suggested that part of the conditions be, and pending approval and implementation
Right.
of the Board of Selectmen's overtime fine schedule for state and regulations shall be made a condition of this license.
Right. So in other words, if, you can do it conditionally until you actually approve your amend your regulations.
Okay, yeah. That'll work.
But that brings up another issue. We have already approved some concerts for 2015, not realizing that that warrant article wasn't up to snuff as far as the AG's.
Did it actually come back yet? I don't know if it actually came back yet, or did it?
Yeah, it did.
It did come back?
Yeah.
Okay.
So now my question is, the ones we have already approved, can we amend those licenses
That's a good
to
question.
follow the regulations? Because at the time we approved those licenses, we thought that fine, overtime fine schedule, and if you're gonna impose a condition of a fine schedule on the
one.
concerts, it should apply to all of them. Knowing at the time we approved them, we thought that the fine schedule was in place. So that's my question.
These are all great suggestions for our town council interviews next week.
Right. Well, yeah, that's fine, but what do we do tonight?
Well, I think tonight you can condition the license based upon a process that you do to amend your license. If in fact it doesn't get approved, you don't amend your license, or your requirements, then it goes through anyways. But if it does, then it's subject to that condition. And then, as far as the retroactive, that's a question for town council. I wouldn't want to, that's a legal
Yeah,
question.
and I'm not trying to stall up your application or anything, but I just think, if we're going to do it for one, we have to do it for the other. And we have to take into consideration the previously approved events,
Let's see.
so, okay.
Can I make a suggestion? If we've already issued a permit, and so the permit's been issued, the horse has left the barn. I don't think you can go back and say, well, we're changing it, so, because it could be any issue. I don't think you
Yeah,
can do
but even
that.
at the time when we approved it, we were under the impression that we had a
But
town meeting approved.
Yeah, but I think that mistake was on our end. If the Attorney General shot it down, there was reasons that they shot it down, because we can't do it. So,
Yeah, our town council probably should have given us better guidance on that
yeah.
topic.
So to go back to something that's already been issued and say, well, we're gonna tack this on and it's still pending, one, I don't think you can do it, and two, I don't think it's the right thing to do. We made the mistake, the town made the mistake, the town council, or whatever that process is, so it shouldn't go back on the applicant. And then to condition something tonight on something that's not even voted on by the board, or who knows what the final
Well,
numbers are gonna be.
Yeah, but these are the conditions that I would look at it as the conditions that the building commissioner is presenting as part of the conditions of the license.
Oh, no, I understand that,
Yeah.
but they haven't presented to this board yet, and who knows what those numbers are gonna be. And-
Well,
and-
no, the schedule is the schedule that was approved by town meeting.
Town
Right.
meeting.
So
Yeah,
that
just
won't change. It'll be the
Right.
same schedule that was already approved by town meeting. So that was.
To go into the,
Yes.
but to go
Right.
into the bylaw.
Yes.
So there's
right.
nothing that's been presented to this board under the regulations, correct?
Right.
You're
it's-
just
that's right.
taking that and
Taking that and
moving it
just
over.
moving up to the regulations. And just so to be clear about that, the AG did not have a problem with the way, with the regulation of the sound, or
It was
the
the limit of
time.
it.
It was the penalty, that was the only thing that kicked it back.
Okay.
So that was the reason why it couldn't be, because the statute limits the amount of penalty by that. But as far as the licensing recondition, that's a different story.
Yeah, I mean,
Yep.
we did apply those conditions to a concert last year.
That's correct.
Right. And also, when this was brought up in your town manager's report,
Right.
I can remember saying, well, can we just make these as a part of the conditions for the next event? And that's why I read this 3 times, looking for that condition from, from Casparo's office.
Yeah, that was something that, if that was something that we missed, then that's my bad. But I think that at the time, I don't think we really gave it that level of consideration as part of this process tonight. So,
Well,
and as far as the previous ones, we didn't talk about it at all, so
Well, we thought we didn't have
Yeah.
to talk about it. It was
yeah,
in
I
the,
understand.
it was the
I
bylaw.
understand your point. So I guess, but the bottom line is that it needs to be part of your regulations in order to really, to do it. Though you did actually put it as part of the condition as the last,
yeah.
and there was no pushback from anyone on that, on the other
And it
end.
wasn't part of our regulations.
No,
Right,
no,
So, I mean,
I
we've
suppose
done
you
it.
could do it, yeah.
yeah. Well, what if, can we approve, we could take a vote to approve it conditionally on just getting more information about what our options
Right.
are with the previously
We'll
approved.
present something to
Would
you
you
at
want-
the next meeting.
Can we use Bill Casparo's language?
Yeah, that's subject to further
Yeah.
approval, so I don't think there's any problem
Do you want me
with
to read it again?
Yes, sir.
And pending approval and implementation of the Board of Selectmen's overtime fine schedule for stadium regulations shall be made a condition of this license. I had another thing in front of it, so.
Was that a motion, Jay?
No, that's not my motion.
Okay.
Again, the only problem I have with that is the pending, there's no numbers. If there was something in front of us that says, what if it's $1 million fine? You know,
No,
so-
well,
so
it's-
we're-
He's going to refer to
It's
the
right
schedule.
here, in the,
Oh, I thought
It's
you were
actually
just,
in the-
okay,
yeah, it's
all
in
right,
the
I'm
bu-
sorry.
it's-
I
that
thought you were
was
just
actually
putting
a
something
warrant-
out.
Oh, no, no,
No,
no.
it's actually in the warrant article itself.
Okay.
I can actually
Yeah, we're
share
not
it with
gonna
you, Jim,
deviate
if you'd
from
like
that.
to see it.
Yep.
I'll pass it over to Jim.
Okay, fair enough.
So you
All
can
right.
see it.
Do you want to read the motion, Ginny?
I move that the Board of Selectmen approve the application of NPS LLC for 2 Taylor Swift concerts on July 24th and July 25th, 2015, subject to NPS LLC agrees to the requests and recommendations stated in the Stadium Advisory Report, and pending approval and implementation of the Board of Selectmen's overtime fine schedule for stadium regulations shall be made a condition of this license.
I'll second that.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Right.
Just to
Thank
be
you.
clear, that impacts the performer, if the performer doesn't, goes over time, so that they're the ones on the hook for that.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Point out one thing,
Sure, Mike.
that, first of all, the stadium had agreed to all of the language prior to being presented to the town meeting. And the second point is that the end time of a concert is determined by the Stadium Advisory Committee as part of the observation that we do. There's always someone there either at the foot of the stage or down in the bowels of the stadium to make sure that, in fact, the concert has actually ended. So that's what the time is for purpose of measurement.
Great, thank you.
This is more or less an insurance policy.
Great. All right. Okay, our agenda item for 7:25, to discuss the spring warrant articles. We have a list, an updated list that we just received. And so essentially, Bill, we go through this list and determine what will stay on, what will continue to be considered for discussion or
Well, I
presentation.
think the purpose of this is to provide you with additional information as to what's pending right now and who's
Okay.
what's been assigned to, and that if there's anyone else that needs any further articles that need assignment to someone to make sure that they get marshaled through.
So we can just run through the list?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so the first item is revised general bylaws, Article 1, Section 2, Paragraph 3, publishing of the town warrant. John Gray.
I believe so.
Okay. Item number 2, stabilization fund for Southeastern Regional School. This is being sponsored by Steve Uden, providing us with information. Now, for the write-up of that warrant article, do we need to have Steve in contact with your office?
Yes.
Okay.
I think Randy Scollins is working with him on that as
Randy's
well.
working with him? Okay. Okay, so item number 3 was the additional liquor licenses sponsored by the Board of Selectmen, and Ginny was doing the background work on that. Ginny has a handout for discussion purposes.
Yeah, I was assigned to look into the additional liquor license warrant articles, and I just have a report on it, and I'd just like to read it. I met with the planning board on January 8th and asked to use the services of town planner Sharon Watson to develop a warrant article for additional liquor licenses. The questions discussed when Sharon and I met on the 9th were the purpose of the additional licenses, how many, how to be cited, restricted to areas or general and/or both, if restricted, where and how to determine the citing areas, and any pending developments which would benefit from new licenses. In particular, what is the implication of the failed bid process in regard to the old firehouse and the former Keating property? Why no bids? When I saw Sharon on the 15th, she gave me a copy of an email request to Ryan at the DPW for a map of the town using the Mass GIS info on the priority development areas of the South Coast Rail and the citing of all existing liquor licenses in order to get a spatial distribution of the licenses throughout town. In other words, this would be a map, and you would have like pinpoints where all the licenses are around town. This would take time to create and then study and interpret. The planning board is in its 3rd phase of the master plan development and has been conducting weekly polls. This week's polls questions were in regard to liquor licenses. The results have not yet been disclosed. I've spoken to Representative Barrows in regard to the language of the bill to be filed. The Commonwealth is looking closer at these requests and imposing restrictions not done in previous years. The Commonwealth is looking for more details in the requests. The Water and Sewer Department has yet to sell flow or entertain requests for flow for any restaurants to date, and the old firehouse, a cornerstone of our downtown revitalization plan, did not receive any bids. The due date for the warrant article submission for the annual town meeting is February 13th. While it would be helpful to be proactive to be ready for commercial development requesting liquor licenses, there are many issues to be worked out in order to prepare a warrant article of which the townspeople can feel comfortable in supporting. And I think that's very important. With the February 13th date looming, it is my opinion that such an article could not be prepared for the May town meeting. I would suggest to the Board of Selectmen that this warrant article be deferred to the fall town meeting, with the idea of Sharon and the planning board working to look at these issues. And also, just to let you know, the planning board, like I said, is in its 3rd phase of the master plan. And I talked to one of the planning board members today, and they will be having an upcoming, and I'm not quite sure of the date, meeting, like an open house, to discuss liquor licenses. So that, I think, is where we would be getting a lot of input, and we would have more information in regard to the master plan. So I think there's a lot of issues that still have to be worked out. I also think we have to, with the establishments now, liquor establishments now are going into the Fox Cares. I'd like to see how they work out their positions and their group. So I just think I think this is something that should be deferred till the fall meeting. That's it.
Thank you, Ginny. Any comments? Jim?
No, I think there's a lot of discussion and a lot of thought process to wrap this up in a couple weeks to get on the February 13th. And I'm wondering if it's more of a spring, where it's a robust warrant article process in May versus the fall. But
I don't think I'd want to defer it to, I mean, the whole idea of going forward with, the reason we were talking about the warrant article for liquor license was to be able to say, you know, once the sewer comes in and everything really starts to roll in, we wanted to be proactive and say, you know what, here's an incentive to come to Foxborough rather than go to Mansfield. We have something, if you were a restaurant, well, we have liquor licenses available. However, I think it's important to find out where they should be. Right now, we have a list of 43 establishments, but really, you want to see it on a map to see exactly where they are and where the need is and where the future development might be. So that's why I don't think I'd want to put it off to the next spring.
I think there's, I mean, 3 nodes, Route 1, the center, and down by Foxville Plaza. I don't think we're going to be bringing in new areas for liquor licenses.
Right, but I don't think we should wait for another year. I think I'd rather do this in the fall.
Okay, fair enough.
John?
But Ginny, your point is, there's no way this could be packaged up and presented
I don't,
May.
no,
Yeah, for this annual.
just because of
Just this one.
the dates.
Right,
Okay.
yeah, because we have, the final warrant article has to be submitted by February 13th. You know, and I believe what the planning board is planning on doing, their open house meeting, I believe it's going to be in March,
Do you have
which
any
is
more-
after the,
Do you have any more details on what the Commonwealth is asking as far as?
well, one of the things that, if you look at the legislation that was passed, the last paragraph said that if the license isn't issued within 7 years, it goes away. And I asked Jay about this. I said, why did the selectmen do that? Why did they do that? And he said, no, the selectmen didn't do that. The state imposed that. And there's a different chairman on.
So in other words,
the-
you can't hold, well, for 7 years, but you can't hold a license in reserve.
You can't, Mansfield's legislation says, their legislation says after 7 years, if it's not issued, it's gone.
That applies to the most recently issued licenses,
Right.
not all.
Those are in restricted areas, and they have, I think they did 8 or 10 licenses, and like 6 out of 8 are specific to different areas, and 2 were general. So it's not the way it used to be, is used to just, you had this general bill that's been vetted already, you know, and you just plugged in the names and the numbers, and it passed through, and they're not doing that anymore.
Okay.
So,
All set, John?
Yeah.
David? Bill, I wanted to ask regarding the fact that we didn't receive any bids for the RFP requests. Could your office reach out and ask the people who did actually pick up the bid packages, what went into their decision to not respond, so that we could figure out, take
We've
that
heard
into
some-
consideration as we go forward?
We've heard
with
some
it?
general comments, but perhaps a little more specificity to
Yeah.
that response would be better for us,
Yeah.
so we can gauge how we're going to handle it going forward.
Yeah. And,
My guess is that we might be just looking at auctioning the property,
mhm.
because it might be easier for us to garner some support for changing the use of that property.
Can you get a commitment from Roger about when sewer would be available for that? Because I think that would be, we wouldn't want to auction it until they've got a pipe there, I would think.
I think that's
I
something.
think that would make a huge difference
The
in the
commission
interest.
had been talking about that recently, so I'll follow up on that.
Okay.
But I think that the people that I spoke to, I think it was the understanding that there was going to be sewer, so no one's going
Right.
to put a septic system there, and there was going to be a liquor license
Mhm.
available. So I don't think
Mhm.
anyone didn't bid because of the sewer or the liquor license. I think it was,
Right.
I think there was some other things.
Yeah, there were a number of people, the people that were looking at it were actually committed to other projects at the time.
Yeah.
And they're sort of, making a full-fledged presentation like that is time-consuming, number one, but number two, I think there was still a number of unanswered questions for them, and I think they just didn't come forward at this time.
Mhm.
Doesn't mean they won't bid on it if it gets auctioned.
Right.
I mean, because I think at that point, there's less restrictions on that process, but But just so everybody knows, you know, the town still has a lot to say about that because it's a municipal reuse situation, so we have some level of control over what gets put there.
The last question I have is, has to do with, there's a third full liquor license that is designated to the Chestnut Green area that's never been used. It's been out there since 2007. And is it possible, what would be the procedure to put that license into the general pool? I'm wondering, is that a possibility that we could free that one up and have that one?
It depends on how it was created. If it was created legislatively, then it would require legislation to change it.
Amendment, yeah.
Can I ask the board, is that something that you think would be reasonable to look at just that one to bring to this spring so that we
That
could
might be
have
able,
that?
something to bring forward, because that's
Right.
that's pretty cut and clear.
Yeah.
So-
That, yeah, I could support.
Yeah.
The reason that I would ask for this general
Mhm.
warrant to be delayed is, I think when we present it, I want the people of Foxborough to feel very comfortable with it. I want us to be able to answer all their questions, and and maybe it might be when we do all this investigation, further investigation, you know, we'll come up with a number. We may look at it and say, you know what, we have, you know, maybe we don't need additional.
Mhm.
But getting that one at Chestnut Green back would be
Yeah.
good. So do you want me to change this to, rather than the additional licenses, pursue the the legislative amendment
To the Chestnut
With
Green
Jay?
area?
with Jane and Senator Tilton?
I'll look to the board for that. Yeah, that's sure.
So
That's your call.
where's that, who has possession of that license now?
But the town does.
The town,
Because it
so
hasn't
it's
been
not,
issued. It hasn't been
it's not
issued.
that somebody has it at Chestnut
No.
Green, they're not using
No,
it,
it's
so
just
the town
earmarked
has
for
it.
that
Okay.
location.
Mm.
And there's no discussion, I haven't heard any that there's another restaurant looking to get in there or
Not in that
more
area.
expansion in that area?
No.
But if you left it open, they'd still have a shot at it if they wanted to.
Mhm.
Okay.
Can I get consensus from the board that we can ask Ginny to pursue that?
I'm good with that.
Is that all right? You okay
Yeah, and
with
then
that?
also just if someone could reach out as you're doing that to the planning board, because when they did the Chestnut
Mhm.
Green State Hospital, there was a vision, and maybe they were off by one, or maybe they have an idea of what could come. So
Mhm.
rather than us trying to grab it, I think that's the first step, is ask the planning board where it came from and
That's a
why
good
it's
thought.
there.
And also, the planning board is really the first board in town that really gets an idea of what kind of development is, there's an interest of what kind of development. So really, they would know before anybody else about it.
So my thought would be that Ginny would go back to the planning board with, and just say, look, we talked about this at the board level. We're not inclined to pursue anything for this springtime meeting, for more licenses, but the licenses that we have, we want to try and correct legislatively. And amend that one license so that we can make it better, make it for better use.
And this would be
And then
working.
If that's acceptable, then we'll take care of it on the 13th.
Yeah, and this would be, we'll be working also with the planning board on the master plan, you know.
Mhm.
Okay. I think it's a great summary, Ginny, all the detail that you've looked at, and it really makes a lot of sense to pursue it this way. So thank you. Any other comments? No? Okay, thank you. Oh, wait a minute.
I got a few
A couple
more.
more items.
A few more on there.
Sorry. Personal wage bylaw classification review, John Gray, you'll
Yeah,
be,
we've had you may have had more meetings than I attended, but there is a calendar that's being put together for
Right.
future meetings. Do you think that will wrap up in time to have something to present to town meeting?
We talked about meeting every 2 weeks. I think we'll have general language, but I don't think we'll have an actual specific, know which pieces we're going to attack at that point. We have some general ideas. I think it'll be tight,
Okay.
but I don't think it's
We'll-
impossible.
We'll leave it on the list.
okay,
Yep.
Mhm.
Gary
Right.
thinks we can get
Okay.
it done, yeah.
all right. Fifth item, amend the open space recreation department bylaw, planning board and Jim.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was at a planning board meeting, and they talked about the open space, and the thought process was to get the boards together, the selectmen, the recreation, who own real estate rental units, the planning board, and just kind of put our arms around the open space. What do we have? What do we want to do with it? How can we work a little bit better together? So I don't know what's going to be ready for town meeting coming up, but I can go back to the planning board and see what schedules they have. I'm not sure what, the details, but I think that's going to be an exciting one.
So, in terms of having a warrant article ready for the 13th?
Maybe the better person to ask is Sharon when she's coming up, if we can hold that one off.
Okay.
She's going to be just speaking in a few minutes.
All right. The sign bylaw, digital billboards, I had a meeting with the Billboard Advisory Committee, and we discussed the idea of moving forward to bring forward a proposal to add digital billboards to the sign bylaw. And in our discussion, we recognized we hadn't received a decision yet from the AG's office as to whether or not they've approved our initial sign bylaw. And the most recent sampling of responses actually to the weekly questions that were out there, the response was statistically very low. So based on a very low number, it looked like perhaps there would be a favorable attitude towards electronic billboards, but it really wasn't statistically significant. So the committee decided that we wanted to take another crack at getting a larger number of responses so that we could get a better sense of what the real feel for digital billboards going forward is. And so given that we haven't heard a decision yet, we're also recommending that we remove this and move it to the fall. And that will give the committee more time to work and get the information that we need, and also get the response from the AG's office. So
Was there a date promised from the AG's office, or it's just when they get around to it?
I guess when they get around to it.
Well, there's some changes going on because of the new administration, so I suspect that stuff's getting pushed a little bit.
Yeah. The next one is constables, general bylaw. I'm sorry, is that okay with the board to defer? Okay. Constables, general bylaw change, sponsored by the Board of Selectmen, Mary Beth Bernard. You're working with Chief O'Leary on this,
Yes.
right?
If the board still wants to go forward, we will have a policy for you very soon. It's in final draft form. This bylaw has been in place since like the 1800s, and we took a look at other surrounding communities and the way that they word their constable policies. We're looking at, one of the big questions we have is whether this new policy is embedded into the new bylaw, or do we just have an opening statement that refers to the policy? So we're just working around some of the policy looks very, very good based on our research. We're ready to present that to you. Looking at finalizing whether they should be 3-year terms, 1-year terms, working on the application. All of those things are in final draft form. So we will definitely have that for you at probably the next meeting.
Okay.
And how come, why are we looking at a general bylaw change? Is something broken, or are we just behind the times?
We're
What-
behind where the other communities are. We've learned that in our current constable policy, there's this reporting to the town clerk on a quarterly basis that's not being done. So we're just really looking at this being a little more stringent, having sort of a code of conduct,
Okay.
a reference check process, just making it up to par with the other communities.
And was it in this, not to belabor it, but was this your idea, or was this
No,
a
this,
complaint? or-
I inherited this. This was already in the works with Sandra Herman, did some of the research with Chief O'Leary.
Okay.
And so I just jumped in and took
Gotcha.
ownership of this
All right,
one.
thank you.
I think in the past when we were appointing constables, I think we all said this is archaic.
Yeah, but nobody knew what was going on, yeah.
So,
Okay.
Okay. The next 3 items are planning board items. Sharon, do you want to come up for a second and speak to these?
Now that I butchered your open space one, maybe you can come back and fix it.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll start with that one.
The open space article is changes to the open space and residential development section. There's currently a 7.5 acre minimum lot size and a number of other very prescriptive requirements. The planning board is interested in making it applicable to smaller parcels and towards making it more flexible. We got a lot of input from Randall Arendt, who's a world-renowned expert who reviewed our bylaw. And we've talked to Randy, other town officials, other town boards, have a lot of good information. We will have a final draft approved by the board on Thursday night.
Great.
And we anticipate that you will have it on or before the 13th.
Great. Thank you, Sharon. Item number 8 on our list is require EIS for applications other than site plan.
We decided not to do that one. It's going to require more thought. However, we have had a written request from a subdivider to accept a road, and it appears that it is complete and would be acceptable. So we are
Want to add that.
substituting that one instead.
Okay. Road acceptance.
Yeah, road acceptance, McNamara Way. It's down off of North High Street behind the country club.
The FCOD density.
At current, there's different setbacks, but there was the density as I interpret the chart and as Bill Caspera interprets the chart and as I understood it from our consultant, it's the same as the underlying zoning district, which means that you need 15,000 for residential plus 24,000 for commercial. And we had an intern, Bill allowed me to hire an intern to go around the downtown and count housing units, and we're going to come up with something as a minimum lot size for mixed use. We anticipate we'll resolve that on Thursday evening as well.
Okay. The next one is amend flood bylaws to include new map references.
The state did the modeling for the Taunton River Basin. 3 of our map panels are in the Taunton River, the Canoe River, so we just need to change that reference.
Okay.
That is written, and I can get that to Mary Beth tomorrow if you like,
Well, just,
or save it with the others.
just to point out for the board's information, I just had a letter today, a letter that came in, actually it's dated December 19th, but for some reason we just received it today, relative to the FEMA Narragansett watershed risk map. Is this relating to that same thing?
That's the exact same thing.
Okay.
So those are our 4 articles.
Okay. You can stay right there, Sharon, because we'll be
Okay.
done in a second. Next item is amend sewer and water district, Roger Hill and Ginny Capola. Working on that. Are you familiar with that?
I know that was, is that the one where they're, they want to change the language, I believe, to clarify some language?
It's like jurisdiction decision.
Yeah, I
making.
mean, I haven't met with Roger. I spoke to Roger, I told him I was going to be the liaison for that, but I haven't sat down and actually talked to him to
Okay.
find out exactly what it is.
And is this last one, the OSD open space, the same as number 5?
I
Or is
believe it is.
Okay, all right. Great. Okay. We all set?
I think so. Did all these things from the water district? All these items?
I think a lot of them hinge on the jurisdictional issue.
I see, okay,
Yeah,
very good.
there's like 3 pieces to it.
Okay.
Okay. All right, the next item on our agenda is with Sharon Wasson, our town planner. And first, we'll discuss the commuter rail project, and then we'll discuss the proposed 40B project on Fisher Street.
Madam Chair, just for everyone's clarification, I know there are a lot of folks here tonight to hear about the 40B project as well as maybe for the commuter rail project, but What Sharon's here tonight is to explain the process of review and information that she's received up to date. The actual, just to be clear about this, the 40B process is a jurisdictional issue strictly for the Board of Appeals. So this is not a public hearing, this is not it's an opportunity for information for the board to hear about what the process is about. And then what will happen is that the formal process for a 40B process is actually submitted to the town and is handled by the Board of Appeals and is heard under that process. To be clear, a permit has actually not been submitted to the town as a request for a permit has not been submitted to the town as of yet. The only thing that has happened is that the applicant has submitted some information to the state, made a formal request to the state for site assignment, and that's presented to the Department of Housing and Community Development. That was done in December.
Right.
And as a result, and there is a comment period that is open right now, but the comments relate strictly to the site, more or less to the various elements of the site itself, not to
The particulars of the
the project itself. So I just want to help
During this
clarify.
comment period, it's
It's strictly the
strictly the
site,
site.
the
Right.
geography of the site, things of that nature.
The road, surrounding road network, the character of the surrounding neighborhood,
Correct.
and the design of the proposed project in a very general way, and the financing. And the result is that this state agency, in this case, Mass Housing, determines whether the project would be fundable if it submitted to the Zoning Board of Appeals and proceeded along much the same path as they've indicated in their application.
Okay. Why don't we just start with that item right off the bat?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I think it's important that we explain the process so everybody's clear about how this process works.
I only made 20 of these, so if I could share.
Just also to be clear, I was present at the advisory committee last week, and there was a brief discussion on this topic. And I had talked to some of the neighbors that evening and had said that I would ask if the planning board, and Sharon could be present this evening to give us some background on 40Bs. But then also, I did say that I would permit discussion, from some of the residents. I just asked the residents if you are going to make a comment to, if you hear one of your neighbors has already stated your position, if you could please just bring forward new comments as you come to the microphone, okay?
I did a kind of quick PowerPoint presentation, just so I had some notes to share with you, and I'll put this on the planning board website. And again, I'm not an attorney. This is my experience as a planner dealing with 40Bs in a number of communities, and my experience as a planning board member in a community dealing with 40Bs. Back when Bill and I were in planning school, there were a number of court cases. The most famous or infamous was the Mount Laurel case, where it was the Supreme Court of the United States held that all communities had a responsibility to provide housing for all people. And in Massachusetts, there's a presumption that if you have 10% of your housing available for low and moderate income people, you've met your fair share of that responsibility for low and moderate income housing. So Foxborough currently stands at 8.9%. And the number is calculated based on the eligible units divided by the permanent dwelling units, the last federal census. So at this point, we're at 8.9, and if we did nothing, by 2020, we will have dropped because there's 30 to 40 houses built every year. In rental projects, the Lodge, Chestnut Green, all the units count. There's a need for rental housing for market rate people as well as affordable. And the state wants to incentivize rental housing. In purchase projects where you buy a unit, only the affordable units count. Like Wyman Village, the town will only get credit for 5 units. We do have a housing production plan, and the Board of Selectmen was very influential in helping us prepare that and adopt it. We would have to, in the town, build 34 units of affordable housing to get the protection as though we were at 10% as a result of a housing production plan. The fifth slide is the meat of 40B. It overrides local regulations, and I took this directly from the regulations. Local requirements and regulations means all local legislative, regulatory, or other actions which are more restrictive than state requirements, if any, including local zoning and wetland ordinances or bylaws, subdivision and Board of Health rules, and other local ordinances, bylaws, codes, and regulations, in each case which are in effect on the date of the project's application to the board. And as Bill said, we're kind of at the start of the domain's application. They have sought a determination of project eligibility. And again, the state is looking at the site in a general fashion, the surrounding neighborhood, the character of the neighborhood, the finances in a general way, and the design in a general way. There's a requirement that the state agency personnel have to come out and visit the site, and we had a lovely time waiting on Thursday morning while the poor folks from the state were behind the barriers of the in East Milton, but they finally showed up. As Bill said, there's a 30-day comment period. They submitted to the state on the 12th. I believe they submitted to the town on the 23rd. So if you have any comments specific to the site and you wish to make them, you should do that sooner rather than later.
And can that be done online?
Yes, there's Greg Watson's email is on the DHCD on the Mass Housing website, and I can get that to Bill. A lot of the details with regard to the project and the specifics of it, as Bill said, will come out once it's in zoning board hearing. And that's when we get the real details. So the developer starts the project by submitting the zoning board application, the project eligibility letter they receive from the state agency, and a list of the waivers. The zoning board has to open the hearing within 30 days. They have 180 days in order to hear the application. That can be extended. Once they close the public hearing and vote, there's 40 days that they have to render a decision. They must make the decision based on consistency with local needs and public safety. They can approve an application, approve with conditions, or deny. And they can only deny if the zoning board finds there are no conditions that will adequately address local concerns. The applicant can appeal if they believe that the denial, they appeal a denial, or appeal if they believe the conditions render the project uneconomic to the Housing Appeals Committee. And communities have a very poor record before the Housing Appeals Committee. The domain is proposing 248 units. If it's approved at 248, Foxborough would go from 8.9 to 12 point something % affordable. Once we reach the 10%, it doesn't mean that we've turned the faucet off. It just means that comprehensive permit applications are different. The town has to be a partner to subsequent applications. Once we're at 10%, a comprehensive permit application begins with you as a co-applicant for the project. So at that point, if you have concerns about the number and the neighborhood and everything else, you have much more authority to say it's too big, it's the wrong place, or whatever. But at this point, we're at 8.9. The application will be what the application is. The zoning board will go through a very long and involved process and a lot of due diligence on their part, and listen very carefully to the neighbors and to their experts and render a decision based on what they've heard.
Sharon and I have talked about this particular project, and we've both have had a lot of experience in dealing with these types of developments in the past, and I think we both agree that our greatest sense of local success, or if you will, control of a process, is through the ZBA process. I mean, to the extent that we can control the process here so that it doesn't get bumped to the state level, means that we have the greatest say as to how we can shape this development.
Right.
If
How
it
many,
gets-
how many of what size units are
Exactly.
affordable? We'll make sure that people who live and work in the town have first dibs in the lottery for the affordable units. To the extent that we can change things and make them more palatable and reduce the impacts and increase the mitigation, it's going to happen through the zoning board process.
I think it's also important to note that it's been both our experience as well. Simply saying no to it is really not a good option, because what happens typically just by saying no to it, if you're under that 10% threshold, the Housing Appeals Board in Boston will likely will not rule in your favor. So we have to take it very seriously. You have to evaluate it very seriously, and you have to make sure that that every piece of information presented is information that can help the process along. But it's very important, and I think we both have experience in this in helping to negotiate projects that turn out to be very successful projects, both for the neighborhood as well as the community. So I think that's the message here, is that, look, I know that the folks here have a lot of concerns about this, and we share those concerns as well. But we also want to be realistic about it. And I think that the concern is that if over the years, it's, simply saying no is really not a good option. So I think it's important to look at all the issues associated with it, make sure that all the questions get answered. We're not here to be an advocate one way or the other. We're just here to present you with what our experiences have been, as well as understand the facts as we see them.
Sharon, just for my knowledge and perhaps everyone else's, what's the definition of affordable? And
Affordable means that it is available to a household earning 80% of median income. Foxborough is in the Boston metropolitan area, and for a family of 4, that's about $86,000. So it's not the poorest of the poor people.
Right.
God forbid anything happens to my husband, and I'm on that list. And so are a lot of other town employees. So it's based on the Boston metropolitan area. If it were Worcester, it would be a lower number, but
based on that $86,000 per household, it's
four,
some,
yeah.
but it's some formula that would come up with a rent, I'm imagining?
Yes.
Okay.
And the rents are typically in the, I haven't looked the most recent schedule, but typically, depending on the number of bedrooms, 1,100, 1,200 to 1,400, depending on the number of bedrooms.
Okay, so that's the definition of affordable housing.
Right.
Okay.
And there's a schedule. You can go on the state website. I'll be glad to email it to all of you so you can see what the income limits are and what the rents are.
Jim, questions?
Yeah, I agree that the zoning board is probably the 95% of the legwork in the town to review it. Mass Housing does have a decent website, but the selectmen do have a role in it. So if you don't mind, could I just read a paragraph which kind of defines what we need to do? So before submitting written comments on the community's behalf, the selectmen should consider soliciting comments from the relevant local boards, staff, and the public. This is the one opportunity where the town's elected leaders play a formal role in the comprehensive permit process. All subsequent decisions relating to the permit application are within the sole purview of the ZBA, as Sharon had said. If the community's comments are detailed, factual, and focused, they are more likely to affect the subsidizing agency's decisions on whether and under what conditions to issue a permit. To be effective, the chief elected officials comments should be limited to legitimate municipal planning and public health and safety concerns. Examples of constructive comments may include the relationship between the proposed 40B developments and the local affordable housing plans, existing infrastructure such as roads, water, and sewer, the environment such as traffic, stormwater management, or groundwater quality, or suggestions on how the proposed site or building designs may be modified to better fit into the surrounding neighborhood. It is not effective for communities to make comments that go beyond the scope of the local review authority under 40B. For example, commenting that a 40B project is opposed by neighbors or would result in increased municipal service costs. None of these are valid legal reasons to condition or deny a comprehensive permit application, and therefore the comments will have no effect on the state's agency decision to issue the proper eligibility letter. So I think this role that they're talking about is within that 30-day period where we reach out to the neighbors, we reach out to the boards, we get our collective thoughts. It's not just putting something on a website. I think we need to draft a letter that says this is our understanding of the issues as we see it at this early point, without having full design plans and traffic studies and all that. The state takes that, and then they take that under advisement and consideration when they're doing their eligibility letter. So basically, we have 30 days from that when it was submitted to do all of this. And if it came in on December 23rd, that means we've got 3 more days to do it. So I think we need to ask for an extension of that time so we can, in fairness, it came in right before Christmas, right before New Year's.
Right.
And this is an important project in the community.
The staff indicated that an
Yeah.
extension would be
Yeah.
forthcoming if we requesed one.
Yeah, so if we could get an extension
Going
so we
back to
could
the
do some
beginning of
work.
that, is that,
Mhm.
are you saying that we ought to have a public hearing on this?
Well, let me say this.
To get input from the community?
The planning board and the ZBA has, and currently working on 40B projects, right? There's some in the books right now, and I don't know if we've ever had a public hearing on it, but I think that's a discussion for this board of how do we get relevant comments from the planning board and the zoning board.
Mhm.
And again, it's not detailed drawings we need, but just big picture, flying at a 30,000, looking down. How do we get our thoughts together without, obviously we can't talk offline. It has to be at this table. I don't know how we've done it in the past.
I would suggest respectfully that I don't think you should ask the zoning board for comments,
Mhm.
because they're going to be reviewing
it on their own.
Judge
when
and
the
jury in this
application.
case,
Yeah, so I think what the state's looking at this point is, here's a piece of property, they're looking at the financials, because it has to, there's certain
Has
profit
to be
margins and all that
feasible.
stuff. But is this a piece of property that meets the requirements that they
Right.
can go forward?
Right.
So I guess I'm asking the board, how do we want to do that?
And that would
get that
include
information?
density.
It would, correct.
It would include, although not strictly required, the underlying zoning as an indicator.
Mhm.
This is zoned residentially. Need to talk about density issues.
Yeah.
Sharon, if an extension were to be granted, how long could,
What would you want? I would ask for 2 weeks at least.
oh, I would ask for more than that. I mean, right now, we're up against a 3-day deadline, and if we're trying to solicit information from boards, I'm saying about a month, just to go through the process. And
Well,
to be
in
able
fairness-
to articulate our concerns intelligently. There's a lot of study that's involved in this. But
Again,
just-
this
just-
is
just from your
looking at it
experience,
at
you
the
know, if-
very high level.
Yeah.
The land is currently zoned residential.
Right.
It is on public roads. There is public water available. It is close to public sewer.
But just to do a traffic study at the intersection of Fisher and 140.
But that's a ZBA
That's
issue.
ZBA.
I know, I get it, yeah.
And you would in your letter say that you would hope that the applicant submits that.
Would request, you request
Okay.
that. Yeah.
I'm grasping our,
It's our
scope.
understanding, Jenny and I, from the meeting on Thursday, that the traffic study is well underway. And Mr. Dirk, everyone's favorite traffic engineer, is working diligently on it.
So to initiate that request for extension, would that come from
I can make the
Bill?
request.
Okay. So you'll ask for 4 weeks and see what they say? In terms of soliciting information,
30 days,
30 days?
30
All right.
days.
Soliciting information from other boards. How has that worked in the past? Do you know?
We could make photocopies of pertinent parts of the site eligibility application and circulate it to the boards
Mhm.
and ask them for comments.
And the boards would include Planning Board, Conservation
Conservation.
Commission,
Board of Health,
And,
Water and Sewer.
Board of Water and Sewer. And DPW with regard to roads. Does that sound about right?
Public safety.
Public safety.
Public safety.
Public safety,
Public
yeah.
safety.
Schools, no?
I don't think so. I don't think it's. It has to do with the site, not the impacts on the community.
Okay.
Any other further thoughts?
Go ahead, Jen.
Can I just have going on to a new topic rather than what you were talking about there? You had brought up the, you said availability of sewer. That's been a question that was posed to me. The question of how, if you look at the 40B legislation, there is nothing in the 40B legislation says that if the sewer is available, it's like a basic service. And then I was told that that idea of a basic service is not based on the 40B legislation, but as case law.
There's a number of cases.
Right, so could you explain the difference between what's in the 40B
Well,
legislation and
one
case
is, if
law?
you go back to the 5th slide, local regulations. And so our sewer district is a general bylaw of the town of Foxborough. It's a local regulation. I would assume that by overriding local regulations, and I understand that there was language put on the map, but specifically the case law is a number of cases, most pertinently having to do with Norwest Woods development up on Manhattan Street on the Norwood-Westwood line, Clark versus the town of Norwood. They tried to deny a sewer connection to prevent a very large 40B from going in. And they had capacity, and they were not allowed to deny connection only because it was affordable housing. So that and a number of other cases that said that you couldn't discriminate providing services based on what it was going to.
Okay, so you
So I
can't just
think in
look
the
at 40B
40B
legislation, word
regulations.
for word. You've got to, there's other things that have to be looked at.
those are
as
sort
Again,
of-
I'm not an
so-
attorney,
No,
but
no,
yeah.
I know that, but that was just a question that was posed.
And if I were asked as a planner, that would be my response, that 40B overrides local regulation, and that there's Massachusetts case law that sewer connections cannot be denied only because the project is affordable housing.
And I think just to reiterate, because I think it's important, when we are reaching out, either as a board or individuals, and I agree with Sharon, the ZBA acts as the quasi judge and jury on this, so we can't involve them, and they can't be giving us public comments, because it's going to affect them
Prejudices their
later on, yeah.
process.
And it's not going to, they're very clear about it in their regulations, we just can't do that.
But it's good to get clarification of, things that if,
But not from the zoning board, is what I'm saying.
Right, okay.
Do you want to take comments?
All right, so any other comments from the board? Sure, sure. I just want to make sure that we're all set
Yeah, I'm all set.
with our discussion for now. Okay, all right. Sure, if you want to come up to the microphone and state your name and address, please.
Danielle Hewitt, 130 South High Street. I actually have two questions. Do we have the capability of finding out why we have to go with a 12% increase? Is there a possibility that we could just have the housing units to make up to the 10% for the growth?
The applicant has proposed 248, and whether the zoning board, whether one of the conditions of the zoning board is to reduce that number based on good public safety and health reasons, and not because we only need 75.
Well, in my experience, I've actually been involved in a project like that in another community where that similar question came up. And you can't just unilaterally just decide based on the number, on the percentage. It's if you're below the number and they propose a project, that's the project you have to consider.
Okay.
So it's not, we can't just pick and choose the number just to come up to that 10%. Not only that, but I think you want to be mindful of the fact that the town would always be chasing that number if that were the case.
Okay.
So in other words, if it was 10%, it could fall below the 10%, you'd be looking at another project. So it's that type of situation.
Okay. So in the applicant that applied, is there any, do you know of any critique against the applicant, the fact that they have flipped and turned properties in the past, the same developer?
It's the Hanover group, the same group that did the lodge, and it's my understanding that they're well-respected in Massachusetts.
Can we submit some articles on some of their other past activities, how they have gotten the licensing and gotten the 440B clearance, and within 5 days, they've sold the property and the permitting to another developer at a very large profit, over 20% of what their proposed or their legal markup is, and then that property turned a couple more times, and none of it came back to the town.
Again, this is a site eligibility letter.
Boston Globe article where this was revealed. I have some copies of it.
Yeah, I mean, this is the type of thing, I think, Sharon, what you're saying is that this information would...
Certainly the abutters and the neighbors can make comment, and I'll make sure they have the name and address of the person to send the letter to. If you call the planning board office tomorrow morning, we'll get that to you.
Or if maybe we send around a list of people want to provide their address, we can send out an email blast to everybody with that information.
Okay,
Do that.
yeah. If someone could pass around a sign-up sheet.
I can give people my business cards and they can email
Do
me.
you have a bunch with you?
I do.
Oh, good.
Okay, that's great. Thank
Oh,
you
they're
very
in the car.
much.
Tell you what, I'll send this around.
Correct.
People can,
What is it that
So-
you're sending our emails to?
To get the address of the person at the state to send comments to.
That
So-
Mr. Watson?
It is Mr. Watson.
I think we all have that.
Okay, and one last question.
Watson@masshousing.com.
That's correct.
Were you looking at taking our comments collectively and representing us as the Board of Selectmen, or are you wanting us to contribute them individually?
I think we should take the comments, the input. We'll also be working with the other boards, but I think part of it is understanding that what our focus will be on is the site.
It
And
is the
so
site.
issues such as what you've just raised would not be in our,
I think we would have to,
Application.
we'd have to filter out what's
We'd
not
have to- right.
relevant and
What's-
put it under our letterhead, what we think is relevant.
so.
Past practice isn't relevant?
Well,
Not to this part of the review process. Perhaps it's something you want to raise with the ZBA discussion, but not at this level.
But there are other concerns, and you guys are investigating with the board, but the whole environmental watershed issue is huge. It's just really huge. There's a lot of environmental land, conservation land that would be affected by the construction on this site because of the location and the elevation of it, and it runs down.
and that's what we will go to the Conservation Commission and have all of their input on that, definitely.
Okay, thank
So,
you.
Sharon, can I have a question in regard to what Mrs. Hewitt said? I mean, if they've applied for 248 units, when they go to the ZBA, can the ZBA negotiate with them to maybe lessen the density? In other words,
For
lessen the
valid
number of
public
units?
health and safety reasons.
Okay, so then that would still, that application would still be valid? They wouldn't have to come back again to submit the plan with, say, 235 units?
No,
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 so
so that would be a
still-
condition
Yeah.
stating the
Still be
number
the
of
same
units.
application.
Okay.
And you mentioned earlier about the fact that they went ahead and passed the 40B when they had a qualified capacity-wise sewage plan. Our current sewage plan does not have capacity if they were connections. So do they consider that if you don't already have capacity? Do you know?
I'm not an expert on the town sewer system, I apologize.
In my understanding, there is capacity in the system right now.
Oh, there is,
There
okay.
is.
so again, we'll get that input from our sewer commissioners. and-
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. Phil?
Can I sit down, Sharon?
Oh, definitely.
I think better on my... I first want to thank
Name and address, sir.
Philip Henderson, 3 Fieldstone Road, Foxborough. I first want to thank the board for allowing the opportunity to come in here. Because initially on this whole process, finding out on Christmas Eve about a project of this magnitude was certainly a surprise. Reading in the paper, kind of classifying the project as a silver lining project, kind of alienated the neighbors there because we felt we were being sacrificed for the good of the town to not having to deal with a 40B till 2040, I think was the term. So, and then to hear that there was a meeting without the neighbors who are going to be directly impacted. So we felt we were on the outside looking in, and we're hearing about it after the fact. So I just, in the future, for something like this, if you're aware of it, it would be nice to kind of try to get a little more residential activity involved instead of, having to find out about it in the paper. I'm speaking for myself up here, but I think it's unfair to characterize that we're here to say no. I think you said it a couple of times. We're not here to say no to the project. We're just concerned with the density and the magnitude of this project. There's 5 4-story buildings that are proposed for this 18-acre lot. Take a ride by the Meditech building on Route 140 across from the 99. And multiply that by 5. That's what people are going to be looking at and seeing. There's over 1,000 parking spots. So that is the concern. So I know that you had said not to speak too much about the project because the ZBA is going to review it. But that's why the people are here. They're not here to say no. They're here to get educated about the process. And I don't think that was, doesn't characterize why we're here. If not for the sheer magnitude and density in traffic, I don't think there'd be this major outcry. I think it's the size, as I said, and we really feel that sewer is the catalyst for this. That if they didn't have the sewer flow, that it's still a question of whether it's available or not available, because we're hearing 3 different stories. That they couldn't build something of this magnitude. So I think that that whole issue of the SOAR program needs to be figured out, because there's been talk about the 40B exception, there's talk about case law, there's talk about precedent, there's talk about the lodge, but that was a totally different scenario. I was on the Board of Water and Sewer at the time. That was a private flow issue that's not even related to this project. So I think that it's beholding on the board and the town to peel the layers off this sewer program and at least give the information to the residents in town who on November of 2013 voted for a sewer district which can only be modified at town meeting. That was the understanding that everyone had. And then we found out afterwards that there was some exception for a 40B. It wasn't discussed in the AdCom. It wasn't discussed in public meetings. Actually, the chairman of the Board of Water and Sewer said, "We missed it." That was the quote at the advisory meeting. And I just think that that's really why we're here. We just feel that the scale and the density of this project with the catalyst of sewer is just going to be overwhelming for this isolated neighborhood. And I just wanted to say at the end that with the scale, that it's wrong for all the right reasons. And I think that it's going to be up to the ZBA and the board to kind of sort through those issues and come to something that's amenable to the neighborhood and amenable to the town. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good, Phil.
Anyone else who'd like to be heard?
May I?
Sure.
It's so comfortable. We all want to sit next to you. John McDonald. I live at 4 Robert Street. I would love to echo everything that Phil said, but I won't in the interest of time. Would like to say, just echo the one point, that the neighborhood, some members like Phil have been at this for a long time and have worked with Jack McLaughlin and now his daughter and others who have wanted to develop this parcel. And we are open to that. We attended many, many, many planning board meetings and have been very open to the process and knew eventually it would be developed. Our concern is about the density. We're about 60 homes. We're a very isolated neighborhood. And we want to be sure that we're heard. You know, I felt a little hopeful in your discussion of the timeline and the constraints. We heard about this December 23rd, and here we are, 60 homes up there, you know, trying to scramble and pull together and come up with our rebuttal and all our concerns. So it's nice to hear you wrestling with the, you know, with timelines and things like that, because that's where we are. And we just want to be sure that somewhere in this process that we're heard, that we have, you know, a voice in this process. The ZBA, yeah, great, but, you know, you're our elected officials. We want to be sure that you're addressing the density. 4 stories, we're 2-story homes. We're raised ranches. You know, a 4-story complex is just going to overwhelm us. The traffic and other things are just nightmares to be considered. So we appreciate the opportunity to participate, get our concerns out. I do have copies of the article that was referenced. I'll leave them here for your consideration. I am a social worker. My job is to place homeless people in housing. So affordable housing is a very, very important issue for me. So, you know, it's, you know, to hear that $1,400 rents are affordable to me is ridiculous, but, you know, I'm not against affordable housing. None of us are. What we want is to be heard. We want the regulations to be followed, to be sure that whatever development is done fits into the neighborhood, that is in keeping with the neighborhood. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. I'm Sheila Breon, 10 Bradner Street. My comment is, I know it's been mentioned about traffic, but I just wanted to go on record. Narrow road, terrible intersection. I'd like to, you know, you can, on record, there's got to be numerous accidents at that intersection already. And now you're going to add 240-something additional homes or units to that. We have no sidewalks. Where are our school buses going to go? And that intersection would certainly have to be redone. And one other kind of question is, we seem to be unsure about the laws of 40B. And you're very knowledgeable, but you've admitted that you're not a lawyer. Is there any way we can have the town's lawyer look into the legalities of what the 40B rights are and what our rights as a town are, and the exact wording? Like, how can we, you know, there's some issues about water and sewer, and what exactly is it? We need to find out the right answer, and that might take a lawyer. And is that something we have to pay for as the town residents, or is that something that the board or our town would invest in for finding out for us?
Bill, in the 40Bs that you did in Dedham, did you engage special counsel to guide the town?
The only guidance would be to the zoning board of appeals.
Okay.
It wouldn't be to the residents per se. It's to the process to make sure that the decision process is made properly and that it's done within the guidelines of the law.
And timeline.
With the question on, that's out there about sewer, though, is there some clarification?
That's a
we can
question that
get?
could be posed to council. I mean,
Yeah.
it could be,
Okay.
for clarification.
Water and sewer did have a special counsel,
Yes.
and they investigated the 40B with, working with, so maybe what we could do is ask for their report. I mean, if the work has already been done, town has already paid for it.
Right.
So if we could, you know, look into that.
That would be helpful, because we definitely, there's 3 different versions, as
Right.
we said, that is going around.
Right.
We obviously need a legal person to tell us what is the correct version and what are we dealing with.
Right. Right, because we want to provide the answers to everyone's questions, and that's why I think it would be good to.
Right, so far, I haven't found a definitive answer to that
Right.
water and sewer
Mhm.
town versus the project. So
Right.
I would like that, and your help would be greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
My name is Ari Weinstein. I live at 110 South High Street. I'd like to sort of touch on something that was mentioned earlier. First of all, thank you all for having us tonight. I would say that one of the great concerns for folks in the neighborhood, and Phil mentioned this, but I'd like to really reiterate this, is the feeling that we've been left out of this process altogether. The feeling that not only have we maybe been abandoned by elected or appointed town officials, but there are perhaps some who have that are very much in favor of this as a plan as it is. Neighbors have had conversations with people who've said, why are you even bothering? It's a done deal. Town manager says the silver lining is that we don't have to deal with this until 2040. That doesn't sound to me like our elected and appointed officials have the members of the community already here as the in mind rather, so much as development. It seems quite clear to me that this development would not be possible without the 40B attachment to it. And it seems to me that plan all along has been to drop the 40B on it because town would probably reject it as is without that attachment. So I hope you will consider the concerns of the neighbors. I hope you will consider the fears that people have had. The fact that this was dropped on us on Christmas Eve, as Phil mentioned, was quite a kick to the stomach. And the fact that several meetings have occurred with people on town boards and the developer, and no neighbors have been invited to any of these things, is of great concern. Representative Barrows, who came to a neighborhood meeting, said that he's never seen anything of this size proposed. And he also said that he first heard about this 2 years ago, when the Water and Sewer Commissioner and the Department of Public Works Director say that they missed it, and the state representative says he knew something about this 2 years ago. I have to question just how valid we missed it is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, all. Bob Smith, 7 Sampson Road. So first time in front of the board. I've seen you all on TV before, so thanks for having me. My major concern is that back, I think it was less than a year ago, the town had agreed to spend a lot of additional money to join with Mansfield, and all of that, the sewer treatment facility that was, the wastewater was targeted for downtown. And it seems to me that as soon as we approved all that additional sewer capacity, that plot of land instantly became a lot more valuable. And it was done deceitfully, in my opinion. This wasn't what the town had voted for. It's not what we had planned for, but this developer saw, oh, extra sewer capacity now, and has swallowed up 38,000 gallons a day, I think is what I heard. In any case, you can imagine the volume of 240 residential units, and my question is how much of that is being taken away from our businesses that we had thought that that was going to. I'm very surprised to hear that we have sewer capacity where our residences are not able to hook into the sewer unless they have some kind of emergency situation. And now we're talking about 240 just kind of letting them on like, oh well, it's gone. It doesn't seem to be getting the kind of reaction that I would think that it would get from our town officials. So that's all I wanted to say. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'll just be brief. Srini Sankar, 6 Bradner Street. I echo like what Shayla also said, like the board, the town should get legal opinion on this all 40B, because it's, to me, like, I'm not clear, like even the town planning board is not clear. Another thing I just wanted to emphasize here is this shouldn't be a predatory practice by any developer overruling all the town zoning laws and planning board and all kinds of regulations, because it shouldn't be like you will come in and get the 40B approval and flip it and gone. As you can see from that article, Billerica town is facing a lot of issues. It's actually dated. It's been like 7 years since they completed the project in Billerica, but they are suffering. Like it seems 40B, one of the point is like the developer has to provide all kinds of financial information as he goes along, like how much he paid for this, like how much he sold, but they are actually circumventing that process. So I want this Board of Selectmen to really have that upper hand when it comes to working with the developer and what the developer is proposing. Is it good for the community? Is it good for the town? And then go by that. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
Sean Miller, 3 Robert Street. Question I just have is, you said there's an expiration date that's coming up in how many days now?
3 days.
3 days?
Yeah.
What happens if nothing happens? What happens if they don't extend? The state doesn't extend because there's been 30 days to do all this, not really because of the holidays and all that. Again, what is the reaction if the state says no?
The state has already indicated that they would likely grant us an extension.
Likely.
Yeah.
but that's likely.
It's never been my experience that they haven't granted one when asked.
Okay, but let's just say they say a week, 2-week extension. Is there time to finish what needs to be done to even get there? Or do we have to ask, or do you reasonably think they would give the 1-month extension?
I can't speak to that.
But
as far as asking for some extension, I do believe they'll give us one.
And what happens if that extension, I guess the question is, what happens if all the information doesn't get to them, or we don't get all the information we need in that time frame? Does this input stop in the next level? Zoning Board of Appeals comes in, and the rest, I guess, what happens if we miss a deadline?
All it means is that the state will proceed with its process to actually determine whether the project is eligible for funding consideration.
Okay.
That means that they would then proceed to the next step of consideration, which would then be the local zoning board of appeals.
Okay, so it'll still come back in Foxborough's court?
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Bill, it doesn't go to the zoning board of appeals until it's approved at the state level.
Right, they
Correct.
need
And
that
then they-
letter
then
as
they-
one of the application.
Right, and then the applicant files a comprehensive permit application with the zoning board of appeals.
Right.
Correct.
Which at that time will be allowed for public input and public hearings.
Right.
And that's the time to negotiate, traffic mitigation, sidewalks, public safety. That's the time.
School bus stops,
That's the
whatever.
time to bring up all of those concerns with the
Screening, noise
ZBA.
buffers, whatever it happens to be.
So what we're doing is we're trying to gather information now to see if there's anything related to the site that would give us a reason to petition the state to deny the applicant.
The site eligibility.
The site
letter, that's
eligibility.
correct.
Site eligibility.
Okay.
Just one more. You mentioned, sorry, Sean Miller again. You mentioned a traffic study has already been started? Is it
It's
based
our
upon?
understanding.
That's our understanding, right?
For this project?
Yeah, Mass Housing was out here on the 15th, I believe, and they made, when they finally got here, the developer had made a presentation to the people who were there, and then when Mass Housing came, they questioned about, we went over with them what had been discussed earlier, and, traffic and all that, and they indicated that the study was, they were already doing the study if they hadn't already done it.
Initiated by the state and the housing committee, or by the developer?
By the developer.
Well, developer will submit that information.
Yeah, the state
Okay.
won't do the traffic study, I believe. It's up to the developer to pay for it.
Okay. And so it'll take into account after the other traffic studies that have been done, Green Street and all
Right.
that failed the Foxfield Plaza.
The zoning board is able to have the applicant pay for technical reviews, and we'll have that traffic study reviewed by another traffic engineer
Okay.
to make sure that it's done correctly and the assumptions are correct and the data is right.
Okay.
And it reflects the most recent conditions.
All right, thank you again.
Oh, can I just mention, we got an email from a lady in the area, and one of the things she brought up was the selectmen got the email. There are a lot of ribbons around the trees in the area, and we asked them about that, why the ribbons were there, and what they have done is they surveyed the trees to find out which ones will stay, which ones are bad, have to be taken down. This would be good if we get rid of the trees around it. It'll grow, would be a better buffer. So just because a tree is tagged does not mean that tree is coming down, because there were a lot of trees were tagged. So it just means for different reasons. There's a code on the ribbon that says why it's tagged. So when you go by there, you see there are a lot of tags. That doesn't mean all those trees are coming down. And that was a valid question that the lady presented to us.
When would those trees be coming down?
I don't know.
Not until after the project will be approved. It would have to be approved. The project would have to be
Yeah.
approved first.
Yeah.
Does the town also do the traffic survey?
Town does perform this practice. survey.
The town will review the traffic
Will
study
review it,
as
but
submitted by the
We don't
applicant.
conduct it.
You can come back up to the microphone.
John McDonald, 4 Robert Street. 2 weeks from now, there'll be a presentation by Hanover about the project. Will there be an opportunity for residents to question during that time, or is that just going to be a presentation by the developer?
I don't think, have we been invited to any meetings?
They've asked to come in
Have they?
front of the board
They're gonna
for
have in front of
February
the board
3rd.
on the 3rd.
February 3rd.
Surprise. Yeah. So it's an open meeting.
Yeah,
All right, thanks.
we'll take comments. Any other questions?
Eric Galanti, 2 Robert Street. Thank you all for letting us talk. That 3-day deadline, does that apply to just this board or all the boards, conservation, everybody that was supposed to put their input in to the state before they make their decision on approving the application?
It's a deadline for everyone.
Every board.
So was everybody else ready to put their paper in, or is everybody else getting an extension as well? Were the selectmen even putting a letter in before Jim brought up what he brought up?
Wouldn't the extension apply to everyone's comments?
Right.
It's a general extension for the whole process.
Right.
So,
For all the boards?
yeah.
Yes.
And
Okay,
all,
but
and all
you-
the abutters and everybody.
No, that isn't what I meant. I meant the boards for the
No, I
town
don't-
officials.
Eric, I don't think the state is soliciting comments from every department head, you know. I
They
think
want-
they look to the leaders,
From
the
the-
selectmen.
you
If it's-
guys.
Yeah, if it's a city, it's the mayor.
Okay, so the conservation committee isn't
No.
sending anything into the town?
No, we're
I mean,
gonna
into the
solicit-
state?
It's up to us to solicit them.
Okay.
We pull in all their comments, whatever relevant, and then we
Okay.
put it in one package to the state.
Very good. And you guys had planned on doing that?
Absolutely.
Hi, Diane Galanti, 2 Robert Street. Sharon, I had a question for you. You had mentioned the housing production plan. Is that certified with the state?
It is approved, it is not certified. We'd have to produce the 34 units to be certified.
In order to do that,
Yeah,
to be certified?
right.
Okay.
But we're approved. It's online if you want to read it.
So do we need to be certified to have the boards have more leeway in being able to say, this is our housing production plan, this is our economical development plan, that this...
Being certified kind of puts you in the category of over 10%. It means it has to be a friendly 40B application.
But can't you be certified if you're under the 10%, working
Right,
towards the
right,
10%?
right.
Which
If-
is where we're at 8.9.
Right, but we
Right.
did not produce 34 units of affordable housing last year.
So you have to have a certain percentage every year?
1/2 of 1%,
Okay,
so,
okay, that was all.
thank you.
I just want to clarify, Eric. Eric's a good friend of mine, so I joke with him a lot. This did not come up tonight. I mean, there was dialogue, emails 2 weeks ago.
Right.
That said, hey, here's the process. We need to get this on the next, we only meet every 2 weeks, so it hasn't been forgotten, and it's not, I didn't pick this up and surprise everybody. We're on our way.
We didn't pick it up yesterday.
But also, and Eric knows this, but on my profession, I'm a consultant and I do 40Bs. I've been in front of towns where the selectmen are just silent, they don't answer. I did one in Hudson, and they asked us, could we do more? You know, it was a great location, and they wanted more. So each town is different, and each project is different. Some people, the one we did in Hudson was behind a Walmart, and the town loved it. Another one got thrown out right away because it was surrounded by wetlands, only had one access. So the 40B is a big umbrella type to try to get to the 10%. The state that reviews these, they do it over and over and over. So even if we didn't have comments, I know the zoning board, you're going to have a very robust discussion. They're going to hire the consultants. The town's going to hire them, and through the ZBA, the applicant is going to pay for them, and you're going to get your wetlands and your all that stuff. So
Traffic and engineering and stormwater.
yeah. So if it looks like we're being a little evasive here, only because that whole process is this big, we're only looking at it this big, and sometimes when we reach out and we interfere in the ZBA, it comes back to bite the town because there's a bias at the beginning. So if you're hearing us a little quiet, at least in my experience, is because all I'm looking at right now with the emotions aside, because I know a lot of you guys out there, and I probably have a lot to say on the site plan, but what I'm looking at here is what's the public safety issues? You know, is it a piece of property that we have to say right off the bat, hey, state, this isn't going to fly because there's historic issues, or they've tried this for 10 years and it's failed. So that's kind of where we're at right now, and it's not because we're not doing our job, it's just because the ZBA has that purview by state statute.
What I understand though is once it gets to the ZBA, it's kind of already rubber stamped, and now it's just mitigation process. I'm hoping.
No, I've seen 40Bs get through
Die
the
at the
state,
ZBA?
die at the ZBA, because they couldn't address the traffic, or they couldn't
So there's plenty of
address.
time to look at what needs to be looked at.
180 days, right? ZBA has like 180 days.
And it
Well,
can
it
and
can
is
be
frequently extended.
Yeah. And what I explained, Eric had asked me a couple weeks ago, and my advice was, when I'm presenting these, the best people I'm presented to are the crazy people that yell and say, we don't want affordable people. If you understand the process, and this is part of it, and you have very valid concerns, buffers, screening and stuff, the developer, it's in their best interest to work with you. If you're out there to say, we're gonna kill it because of X, Y, and Z, and it meets all the requirements, you're gonna end up with nothing. So you guys have to figure out the protocol and the rapport with the ZBA to get the most bang for your buck. And I think that's a process you just have to go, and we all do. We'll probably go to some of these meetings and observe also.
Sharon, also, is there a planning board aspect to review? Does the ZBA work with the planning board?
There are frequently waivers from the subdivision rules and regs, and the planning board goes to great effort to, excuse me, to evaluate those waivers. Are they within public safety guidelines? Is 8% too steep? Is the cul-de-sac too small? And we spend a lot of time going through those as the expert, if you will, on that subject.
And will those be public hearings also?
They will be public meetings and
Public
discussed at an open public meeting and on the planning board agenda.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Sure.
Sorry.
Can you come back up to the microphone, please?
Sorry.
It's all right.
Sheila Bringon again, 10 Brent. When Jim had mentioned one access, it put a light bulb in my head. This site would have one access in and out into Fisher Street.
Yeah, I haven't really looked at the design plans. I mean, I saw a concept, but.
It's a double-barreled access.
Yeah.
So one road in, one road out, but it's in the same.
It's separated like
It's
Beach
separated-
Street.
yeah,
with
separated with a,
So if a tree falls, you can go on the other side.
Correct.
Yeah, the project I was thinking was in Framingham, and you had to go like 800, 1,000 feet with
Down a
wetlands
narrow
on both
little
sides.
tiny
There was
strip, yeah.
There was no way to get, if something fell, there was no other
All
secondary
the way
access, and that's why they denied it.
And just so the public is aware too, and the board is aware, that was one of the things I noted at the site visit was there should be another emergency access out in the event of something major happens on the site. So, and it does appear that there may be opportunities to do that. So,
In the proximity to 95 with that intersection, again, could create problems with traffic and ramp and access to 140 and traffic flow to the
And that's
10.
something that the
Again, so-
ZBA will
ZBA will have to
really spend a
evaluate
lot of time on.
Okay.
So they'll typically spend an entire night on traffic, if not more.
Actually, could I just make one clarification? Because a comment was made a couple times about the silver lining comment that I made in the newspaper, and it was picked up in the newspaper. And I want to be clear about that. There is a silver lining in that respect, in the sense that you do gain a lot more control over the process once you meet that 10% requirement. So the fact that this project pushes us over that does put us back in more control for future consideration. I understand that there's a lot of emotion and concern about this particular process because this happened to be the one that pushed it to the 10%. But I would be clear about what my comment was made and what was intended to be was strictly to make sure we gain full control of the process going forward. And so I understand that there's, again, a lot of concern over this project, and I want to be clear about the fact that we are looking at every aspect of it to make sure it is done properly, if it's going to be done at all.
Sure, come on up.
How you doing? Dan Canzella, I live in 6 Robert Street. I just got a quick question, because behind, previously there was a project, they want to put an extended stay, and our big concern is the fact of the height and conforming to the neighborhood, and we all know the 40B has verbiage that in it that states it has to kind of conform to the neighborhood. What type of impact does that have on the size and height of this development, since there's already been something that was turned down commercially for extended stay? Does that have any impact? Because, I mean, it's a similar building, similar site.
Yeah, my understanding
Similar
is
plan.
that they're proposing a four-story building, four-story buildings, I should
Which
say.
is unprecedented in this town, right, correct?
I wouldn't know if it's...
For
if you-
residential?
If you take a look at the hotel that is there now, and we were looking at that the day of the site visit, this particular site is actually, it dips down. So the rooftops may actually be lower than that particular building where the hotel is.
Yeah.
The Comfort Inn. So those rooftops actually maybe actually be lower than that.
So they're taking that into consideration, and that ruling into consideration?
Yeah, that's right.
All right.
So
Why is that? Is it set further back?
No,
The land
the
itself.
land itself dips down, it slopes down into like a lower area. And as a result, that's where the building heights will not appear to be as high. They will be high, but they're not going to appear to be as high.
So they are taking that into consideration?
It is a consideration, at least that's the way it was proposed.
All right, that's my question. Thank you.
If anybody's interested in actually reading the regulations, it's 760 CMR 56 that you can find on the state website. So,
Thank you. Thanks very much. So just as next steps, we have the comments recorded in our minutes. We'll reach out to the other boards for comment. You'll inquire
We'll
for
put together a
the
letter to the state.
30-day extension.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll make the request tomorrow.
Okay.
Sorry, just quickly, would it be beneficial for the neighbors to get together and just put our thoughts down and submit them in one spot?
Would be
to
great.
one person? That way there, you guys can look over it.
We could
Sure,
certainly,
it's not
we could
gonna
send
be
it as an
anything
addendum
you
to the
guys
letter
don't
to
pick
by
up
the
on,
board.
but-
I think that would be all right, too.
Yep.
Yeah, that'd be helpful.
Thank
We'll
you.
do that. Just submit them to the selectmen.
Have Diane check your spelling, other than that.
I won't be doing the spelling, I can guarantee that.
If you look on the town website, our email addresses are there. If you could just email it to me, that'd be great. Thanks. All right, thank you so much for your input. Appreciate it. Okay, the next item is the commuter rail project discussion.
Bill and I have kicked this around a little, and I think what we've decided to do is I came up with a list of issues I had. I'm meeting with Mr. Krantz tomorrow on unrelated issues. I wanted to talk to him about them and see whether or not they're...
Hold on one second, Sharon. I just want to wait till they clear out a little bit.
Excuse me, folks, we still have a meeting to go on here, so thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Sharon.
Bill and I have talked about this, and my basic position when I brought this up with Bill is the discussions were between the craft organization and the MBTA. And I felt there were a number of issues that the town has having to do with access from the neighborhood to the train station if I lived on North Street and could see it. And the only way I could get there was to walk practically to Walpole and then halfway to Rentham to get to the station. I'd be very frustrated. We certainly don't want people walking on the tracks, and I understand there'll be a fence. And I wanted to know more details about the layover yard. Would there be whatever the train equivalent of block warmers, and are they noisy, and what time would they run, and what about overnight parking, which is allowed in other MBTA commuter rail lots? Will it be allowed? How are they going to handle large event days? Is this within the surplus parking that they've identified? What about shuttles? If I were Meditech or Schneider or any of the large companies in town, or perhaps even the town would want GATRA to run a shuttle, where are the shuttles going to drop off safely for people? The handicap parking is a very long distance from the station. The station is deliberately located where it is, so there's enough stacking for the football train patrons so they can all get over and under and be ready to get on the train. You know, could there be closer parking for handicapped folks? And the stations are too short for the proposed 3 train length cars. And when and if are the stations going to be upgraded? What's that time frame? I think a lot of these answers are in the attachment to the agreement, which I haven't seen, and Bill hasn't seen them either. So I'd like to talk to them before we kind of ratchet our response up and just say these are concerns that the town has. One of the master plan questions of the week, Lorraine referenced in terms of the billboards, was commuter rail, and people were strongly supportive of it. I know I live in the neighborhood I live in Walpole because I have a train around the corner. I made that deliberate decision, and my perception is my quality of life is better because I can get on the train and be downtown in 38 minutes for, you know, a fifth the cost of what it would cost me to park for an hour. That's my prejudice, and I'll be real upfront with you that that's my prejudice. I'm a bit of a transit fanatic, if you haven't figured that out by now. But, you know, people in town on the unscientific, not statistically significant master plan question of the week, about 2/3 of them liked the idea. They felt there was an opportunity. We just want to make sure that that's a positive opportunity for the town. Make it into a win-win. So I'd like to have Bill and I talk to them and flesh out these questions and then report back to you, not on the 3rd, which is my anniversary.
But I think it's also important, we want to get some more feedback from the board as to other questions, issues that you may have, or issues that we need to get addressed at this point, how we proceed from here, and what the direction is.
I know we talked about having special counsel work with us.
My initial thought was, David Moeller in his letter says that MEPA review is not required. A mandatory EIR is required for construction of a new rail or rapid transit line along a new, unused, or abandoned right-of-way for transportation of passengers or freight is a categorically included environmental impact report. So how much between a maximum of 3 trips a day and 3 trips a week and abandoned is it? You know, CSX is down there very infrequently. Mm-hmm. And then an E&F is construction of a new rail or rapid transit line for transportation of passengers or freight. And there is a provision under MEPA, and Jim probably knows this much better than I do, where you can seek fail-safe review. MEPA says, in so many words, we tried our best to anticipate every circumstance that you'd need to file an environmental impact report. But if a town or a butters or someone who has standing believes we missed something, you can ask for fail-safe review and say, you know, guys, this is right on top of the Neponset River, and you really should look at this a teeny bit more carefully than not. And I think let's talk to them first, but I wouldn't go for special counsel just yet. Is that your sense, Bill?
Well, I guess that one of the concerns I had was that we're in the middle of selecting new council at this point. Right. So, I mean, that was another issue too. But one of the councils that we're looking at is actually one of the candidates for consideration right now. We could conceivably go with them, but I think the question I need to scope out is, what is it that we want to engage council for? And I think that's really important to me, so I know how I frame the questions.
Well, I think one of the questions is the process and the lack of transparency. It was like, oh, by the way, you're getting a station. Without any input. If I lived on North Street, I would be very upset, especially with the idea of having a layover facility right in my backyard. I mean, that's something. There's a man on North Street, from what I understand, he's building a house there. If he was digging up the foundation
today.
Don't you think he would have liked to have known, maybe a month ago, 2 months ago, whether that may have been made a difference in his decision what to do on his house?
Yeah, it's right next to the house.
Yeah, and when you go up North Street right now,
You can see it. I mean, in the summer, you can't see it, but you can see that. That's not fair to the people on North Street. They had absolutely no input. Neither did the whole town. It was just
The
dropped on us.
feasibility studies, we had no impact.
No,
Right.
yeah, no.
And not only that, and also with the CSX tracks, the $23 million. That's going to affect not only the town of Foxborough, Walpole, and Mansfield. I mean, the whole process was...
I think we have to look at our town.
Right, okay,
Right.
okay.
Yeah, the countervailing argument to...
Walpole's
you know,
issues are different and Mansfield's.
The countervailing argument to acquiring the track rights do make sense in this bigger scheme of transportation in general. The question is, how much of an impact is that going to have on the community if you, because it's really two questions. One is, it's two issues. One, acquiring the rights to the tracks for emergency use, that type of thing, I understand that. Now, to change it to, we're gonna use it for full commuter rail service, it's a different question, different approach. So the question now becomes, has any process been missed along the way? And I think that's really the question we're trying to flush out.
Yeah.
I think there may be a question as far as the MEPA process go, because as Sharon points out, there are a couple of areas that get crossed.
Well, and that was the reason for special counsel, because we don't know all the processes that
Right.
exist and that might have
We
been
only have
missed.
David Mollers.
Right.
He's the
Yeah.
proponent.
Correct.
And you know, Mr. Moller, when the question was asked about an increase in the MBTA assessment to the town of Foxborough, Mr. Moller said, oh, no. Mr. Moller works for Mass DOT. Mr. Moller has nothing to do with assessments.
The assessment's based on population.
But it doesn't make any difference. He's saying no when he doesn't really know the answer because he didn't do the assessment. That's my concern. We have gotten answers, and how do we know that the answers are correct or not? I got the impression they were just telling us what we wanted to hear. And that's not a good way of conducting business.
So if I understand what you're saying, Jenny, if I may, Bill.
Yeah, sure.
You would like someone who's knowledgeable to look at Mr. Moller's letters and give them the smell test, if you will.
And
Yeah.
to take a look at the process as it unfolded,
Right.
to see that perhaps the process should have taken another path. Because the process is what it is. We, collectively, we have no idea if that was correct. You know, as Ginny mentioned before.
Well, there's a transportation improvement program process where projects like an extra lane on 128, or improving the 95-128 interchange, or, you know, bus service in Wellesley to connect with the Metro West Regional Transit Authority. All the transportation and transit projects go through a process, and they're all evaluated, and then they're put in a capital plan, just like we do our CIP here in town. And then we know that in 4 years from now, the project that's going to upgrade some station or the signals on some line is up for implementation. It was completely separate from the public process that talks about how money gets spent on transportation in the Boston area.
I mean, I think it's important, and I don't mind, you know, being very clear about to the board where I sit on this issue, is that I think that there are clearly some advantages to having the rail line service in place. But we better make sure that whatever is put in place has addressed all our concerns. And right now, there hasn't been any process to identify those concerns and to make sure that that everything has been addressed properly. And I think a lot of people were surprised by how quickly this moved.
Yeah.
And I think timing had something to do with that, clearly. But having said that, that doesn't mean that we still can't go back and take a look and see what steps can be retraced and corrected or addressed going forward.
Well, when Mr. Moller made his presentation to us in Foxborough, his presentation, the first, half hour or something, he made the presentation. And then as the evening went on and we started asking questions, an hour later, everything was different. It was totally different. So how can, you know, and that was what was mostly, and if we hadn't asked those questions, we wouldn't have, so it's a good thing to ask questions.
Absolutely.
And then, when you do ask the questions, you find there's two separate answers. So then you say to yourself, what is the truth here?
Well, I think the process that we followed was identified all the questions, which I thought was very good. We played them all out there, and they did respond within about a 2-week timeframe.
Right. You
And the
submitted
next
them in
day,
writing.
then the next day, they
the deal
signed
was
it.
done, so it was like, okay, so it kind of takes away from the credibility of the process when you go through, when you do something like that.
You think, yeah.
So,
Kind of.
so clearly, that's the concern that came out of that whole step. So, I think the proper course is to take a look, see if all the steps were done properly. Does the town have a place at the table in this discussion? And if not, is there a way for us to get one?
I think that's what I had asked for,
Yeah.
because, I mean, is it good or bad for Foxborough? Is it good or bad for the MBTA financial?
Right.
Those things are aside, and
Yeah.
but a lot of those dialogues happen
Mhm.
during a process.
Right.
So when we asked the questions, which were good, that they responded, but line item number one was, no ENF, no draft EIR, no EIR, no MIPA.
Not required.
Yeah, so we're
Existing
sitting here
train
saying,
line.
do we say
Football
okay?
train 12 times
Yeah.
a year.
Now, how does that affect the CSX line if they're going slow and we get, so things are affecting each other, and if we just sit back and say, aside from all the arguments, is it good or bad for Foxborough, but what's the path? So I would like to have a consultant, a permitting attorney that understands the MIPA, that understands railway systems, to say, this is how they got here, and everything's fine, or there was mistakes made. But to go forward, this is the state permitting, this is the MBTA permitting, and for someone to look at our local bylaws, because, for those parking spaces that are gonna go towards the MBTA, how does that affect the local zoning and all the approvals? We're not qualified none of us are qualified to do that, but I think it has to be asked and answered by somebody that does know the answers, and not just taking the applicant's word for it. Just similar to, the 40B, they come in, they have their own consultants
Mhm.
present it, and when we have consultants review it, and they go
Make sure
back
it's
and
done
forth. So
properly.
I don't know whether we agree or disagree with the train coming to town, how we would not do that step.
And also, one of the things that I think is important to look at is transportation alternatives. I mean, a couple of days after that presentation, there was a transportation seminar up at Patriot Place that I attended, Bill attended, and Sharon, you were there.
Some
And
of the
they,
members of the planning board.
yeah, and they talked about, and the number, what I took away from that is the number one thing that people were talking about, that it's happening all around the state, is shuttles from train stations, so that you don't have to put $23 million into a train station. What you have is you can have shuttles from the surrounding train stations, Norfolk, Walpole, Sharon, and Mansfield, and take people from the train station to the places of business. If that's a concern of the business entities, getting their people from the train station to their place of work, well, then shuttles is a lot cheaper way to do it. And that was the number one thing. I was very impressed with the presentation from that man out in Westboro.
Mhm.
And that seems to be the way things. We have 4 train stations around the town of Foxborough.
And Easton will come online when and if South Coast Rail ever happens. We're in the desert. Everyone
Yeah.
around us will have trains.
And if you use a shuttle system to do that, you don't need an overnight maintenance facility in someone's backyard on North Street.
And then, my concern is there's always part 2. So when it continues straight through to Providence, and the town has 7 crossings, and you try and get through the center of town today with CSX going through at 3 o'clock when the kids are getting out of school, it's very difficult,
Right. and
dangerous.
Multiply that by 10 times a day.
Yeah,
I
the
can
town will be
picture
cut in
the Estella
half.
bus at Mechanic Street.
Right. The town will be cut in half. And, I'll never make it to Stop and Shop again.
No, and that's an important
It is.
consideration, because when they first made the presentation, they said, oh yeah, we're gonna acquire the CSX tracks, but nothing's gonna be done. An hour later, they're telling us how they're gonna put $35 million into road improvements and
Right.
bells and whistles and all that for the crossings. Well, what changed in that hour from no improvements to multi-million-dollar improvements?
Which,
And you
Which we
wonder
all
why,
know.
and you wonder why people are skeptical.
right. But I think it's important to note that that $35 million has not been approved. It's not been even requested from the budget yet. So it's identified as a cost, but has not even been requested for funding. So that's another piece of this process that hasn't, that still
Yeah,
has to
where
be-
does the 23 million come from? Where does
The
the
23
third-
million apparently was already asked for. I'm not sure what budget it was in, but apparently was.
Wasn't
already
it part of the bond bill
I think
that
it
was
was.
passed
I think it was.
a year ago?
Sharon, aren't you on the budget committee?
MBTA Advisory Committee, Budget Committee.
Okay. And were you aware of all this?
Nope.
All right.
MBTA Advisory Committee was not aware of it. The MPO Board was not aware of it.
And who's the chairman of the MPO board?
Mr. David Moeller?
Thank you very much. The chairman of the board, and he doesn't even tell his own members of what's going on?
Please. I have one last pitch. We're made a commitment to town meeting. We would finish the master plan this fiscal year. We have 2 public workshops planned. One on Thursday, the 29th at the library, having to do with growth and change on Route 1. So I have some lovely postcards for you to share with your nearest and dearest.
Came in the mail today.
Well, you know, yeah. Give it to your neighbors. You know, Valentine's Day's coming up, you know, always recycle it.
Thank you.
Sharon, when I talked to Bill today, he
Thanks, Sharon.
mentioned that the planning board was gonna have another meeting guiding Foxborough's future. Is that gonna be consideration of like liquor licenses and stuff?
It could be.
Oh, okay. I mean, that would probably be on the agenda. That's the meeting that I was referring to.
So the planning board is having, as part of their master plan process, a Route 1 workshop Thursday, January 29th at the Boyden Library at 7 p.m. And then Guiding Foxborough's Future, Goals and Priorities, another planning session Thursday, March 26th, 7 p.m. at the, in this room, the media room at the high school. So please attend.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sharon.
I appreciate it.
Sharon.
Sharon, can I just make a quick plug for the planning board? Only because I work in with a lot of planning boards, and some of them are just, I'll be honest with you, they take applications and review it and send it back. But the stuff that you guys are doing is very helpful to the town. I know you guys spend a lot of time on this with consultants reaching out and
Doing real planning.
doing real planning.
Yeah.
But you're limited in your planning with the input that you get back. So I can say right now, if you go through all this time and you have these sessions and nobody from the public shows up, but yet they're complaining. So, you know, that whole dynamics of you can only do so much, but you need that information for people to give input. You know, these are important things. Route 1, everyone knows what Route 1 is. It's a gold mine or it's a dust bowl, you know,
Right.
and it's up to the town and the
And
future goals and
extent to
priorities.
which the town guides that and is a partner to that development, I think is an important question.
So if people are listening, or if this is, you know, gonna get some legs, people need to come and talk and give, you know, vent, give their wishes, give their desires, or whatever, but it's not gonna be from 5 members up here and 5 members on the planning board. We need people to give input, so.
Thank you, Jim,
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it.
Jan, can you explain the weekly polls that are in the Foxborough Reporter and online?
Kathy McCabe, our master plan consultant, has teamed with the Foxborough Reporter, and there's a question of the week. Some of them are land use, some of them are more general questions like the train, liquor licenses. People can fill it out on paper at Town Hall, the library, the senior center, and the office of the Foxborough Reporter. They can go online to Foxborough, spelled out OUGH, masterplan.com, and do it online and let us know. The polls are typically open every week from Friday morning through midnight Tuesday. So you have another 2 hours or so to tell us what you think about whether liquor licenses should be issued for specific geographic areas or not. There'll be a question next week, and we intend to keep doing that. We've been getting very good response, Some of them have been close to 300 people have weighed in to tell us what they think about issues. So we felt that the survey we did 2.5 years ago was very much colored by the casino debate, and we wanted to get additional information, ask some of the same questions again, and ask questions we wish we'd asked 2.5 years ago. So we're delighted with the response, and we got a lot of suggestions from the public what other questions we should ask. So keep watching for those. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Sharon.
Sharon.
So,
Next.
just to go back to the conversation, so it's still the pleasure of the board to try and secure counsel? I know that I heard some of you say that, so I want to be clear that that's the direction.
I think it's important that we verify the process.
Okay.
Make sure that the process was actually adhered to.
So we have identified a person which we think is pretty well qualified in this particular area. So I can contact that person tomorrow and start to initiate the process.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, the last item on the agenda is Bill's town manager update.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. This week, starting on Friday for most, but Thursday for me, will be the MMA annual meeting. The process will be, it's a two-day meeting in Boston to, and I know a number of board members are going to be attending. If you are still planning to attend, or if you have changes to your schedules, please let us know so we can make sure that we're covered on all those fronts there. There was some good news on the Chapter 90 front, that the new incoming Governor Baker actually released the other remaining $100 million that Governor Patrick had withheld from cities and towns. So we will receive another $310,000 in, we've already received it actually, $310,000 of new money that can be used for Chapter 90 funding for local roads. So our engineering and public works department are already working that additional funds into their plans. So we'll be talking to you shortly about the plan for the upcoming year and what we're going to be doing for road improvements. So, but a pretty comprehensive project has been done to date. It was actually, I read the draft report the other day. It was actually pretty impressive as to what's been done in just the past 3 years. And then we during the past few days, past week and a half, we've been meeting with the architect for Town Hall. Various staff members have had their inputs into the design of the new building. It was good to see that today we were one of the last people to have input into the office spaces, and there weren't that many significant changes to the overall original plan that we came up with, which was great to hear. So in terms of space, there's not a lot of additional space requirements. So I think that the working committee did actually a very nice job of identifying all the space needs initially, which made their job a little bit more easier to accomplish. And then King Information Systems has been working on cleaning up a lot of the space in the downstairs area where all the files have been stored. And so they're actually consolidating that information and bringing it and putting it in a much orderly way. Actually, if we do ultimately leave the building, this is actually an ideal time to do this, so that when we do move, stuff is already going to be discarded that we needed to discard, so we don't have to go through that process at that point. But I think regardless of that, we're now much more organized, and they're going to be working for a couple more weeks down there to finish that work up. But it's a different room. It's pretty amazing what they've done so far. We found a whole room full of records that we can just discard. We don't need to hold on to anymore based upon the requirements of the state. So that's really good news.
What about the jail cell toilets? You keeping those for now?
No comment on those. And of course, I just want to say again, congratulations to the Patriots, AFC champions, and on to Glendale, Arizona for the Super Bowl, and good luck to them. Hopefully they'll be as successful as they have been up to this point in the season. And they have a pretty formidable challenge in the Seattle Seahawks, but I think they're up to it, and hopefully they'll come out on top in a few weeks. So that's my report. Mary Beth, anything you want to add?
Well, if I might, I'd like to do a plug for our 2 open positions that we have right now. since Marcia Armando was promoted to executive assistant, the vacancy exists in the Board of Health for an administrative secretary. That posting closes on the 23rd, which is Friday. We've had a good response to it, but still encourage people to apply, to look at the posting on our website. We also have a human services coordinator position at the Council on Aging, Human Services, and that person would be dealing with not only managing the transportation program, but also doing outreach. It's a pretty diverse position, encompasses for anyone who likes to work with in the human services field. It's a nice way to get a good expansive experience. So that one closes on the 29th,
Those are
27th.
Both full-time positions?
Both are full-time positions, 35 hours, and all the details can be seen on our website. And thank you.
Great. Thanks.
Just one thing I just want to mention too, dealing with this weekend, is that we were notified on last Wednesday, I believe it was, that the town of Foxborough is going to receive a reward from Maya, one of 6 in the community, and 6 in the state, for safety practices. So we just want to make sure everybody was aware of that, and the public was aware of that the safety team has done, again, another terrific job, being recognized as one of only 6 communities in the state to receive that award. So great job again. So I'm really pleased and honored to be able to help receive that.
And that award's going to be given out at the MMA?
At the Maya luncheon on Saturday.
Okay.
So if any, certainly welcome any and all board members to come. They can make it.
Be there?
Great.
We'll be there.
Great.
Oh, we just wanted to mention, there had been a problem on Cook Road, I believe it is, with water, and the neighbors mentioned how professional the DPW was in handling the problem, and they came and explained what was going on to them, and so I just wanted to pass the compliment along to the DPW.
Excellent.
All right.
Great, thank you.
Okay, I think we're all set. No, we have action items. All right, sorry.
The first action item is the reappointment to the Child Safety Committee for the following members. Deb Spinelli, with the term ending December 31st, 2016. Jeffrey Downs, term ending December 31st, 2016. William Dudley, term ending December 31st, 2015. Vicki Lowe, term ending December 31st, 2015. And Sergeant Tim O'Leary, term ending December 31st, 2015. So I move that the BOS reappoints the just noted people.
Under comments on that, could we hold off a meeting on this? It was emailing Deb back and forth today. This kind of fell through the gap a little bit, because when I wrote the article, I had them all as 3-year terms, and then Attorney Gellerman had suggested to stagger them. Mm-hmm. So there's Deb Spinelli, Jeff Downs, and Bill are 3-year terms. Bill Dudley's a 2, Vicki Lowe's a 2, Linda Walsh, Bob Correa are 1. So somehow between when this got changed from council to now, and Deb wasn't around at the time, they all got changed to 1-year terms. So I think back in November, everyone was appointed for 1 year.
Right, but initially they were all 1-year terms initially, but then the second time around they were going to be staggered.
Right now.
So they are staggered tonight. That's what tonight.
All the dates that are in this are all 1/5.
Yeah, no, I think it says,
I
but
did a
but
handout.
there's a
Oh,
handout
it's an
that
updated one.
corrects that tonight.
Yeah, you
Because
got it.
we went over it before the
Well, if
meeting.
you said there was
tonight.
a handout.
There's a
When did the
handout?
handout come?
Tonight, because
Tonight.
actually, I
Did I get it?
was responding to your
you did.
request for information on that, and we went back and looked at the language, and it does stagger the terms.
Yeah,
So
that's-
we gave you the new status.
That's why I mentioned the term ending.
Different
Oh,
dates,
okay, I'm
different
sorry.
dates.
Well, you
so-
should have stopped me in the middle. I'm looking at this and.
Sounded
these are
so
all the same.
eloquent.
All right. Sounded so
Where
good, we
is he
just let you
going
go.
with this?
Yeah, I was trying to do it, not embarrass Deb, because she wasn't around at the time. I was taking the hit for it. I wasn't following it.
No, actually, we picked it up. Deb brought it to our attention. We tracked.
Is
we
Linda
tracked it.
Walsh and Bob Correa not being reappointed?
No, they have to. Well, they can only be appointed for. They have to wait a year. before they can be reappointed again.
Their one-year terms have
One-year's
expired, and according to the bylaw,
They have
you
to
have
wait
to
a year.
wait
Oh.
after
Wait
your,
1 year.
you have to wait for a year to elapse after your term ends to be reappointed.
So right now, they're not on
So
the
the
committee?
two one-year people, you'll need to replace with new names, because under the bylaw, they need a year to elapse after their term ends to be back on.
I suppose they can still come to the meetings, but they just wouldn't be voting members.
They could maybe be
Well, one
ex
person's a
officio.
chairman,
Oh.
and the other one's, Bob Correa is the chairman, and Linda Walsh is she's one of the officers on it, so it's gonna,
We just want to make sure that we looked at the various categories, and those are the categories. One of those is actually the person at large, correct?
Bob Correa is a member at
Okay,
large,
and the
yeah.
other one is,
Linda Walsh, she's under the private educational social
yeah, that's
institution.
exactly right. They're both one-year terms.
So because it was, so by the term ending December 31st, 2014, because they weren't reappointed, they have to.
Because their term expired.
they're
they
one-
wait
I
a
mean,
year.
because they expired at the end of 14.
Right.
Yeah.
Now it's into 15.
Yeah.
Yeah, where's that
Because there are one-year
language?
terms for starting on January 1st. Did it start January 1st, or was it up until, because it was just approved in April?
Yeah,
right?
that's what, this is
So it couldn't-
surprising me, because it couldn't have been a year.
So it wouldn't be a full year yet. The full year would be effective,
I think they were given expiration dates at the end of the year. We should check that, though.
yeah, the end of
Maybe
the
it could
calendar
be the
year.
end of the fiscal year.
Could be end of the fiscal year.
If there's a way to hold off on, I do not want, not that I do not want, but if they're off the committee, it's
It makes
not
sense to me
good.
that committee wouldn't be formally created until the start of the fiscal year, right? Because that was approved at town meeting.
I think it's wise to check this one out.
Yeah.
There's enough
Yeah.
confusion on the dates.
Okay, so we'll hold on this.
Because if it is, then we may have time to correct it, because there might be some mechanical flaws in this thing.
So I'm withdrawing my motion?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Hold on, all the appointments?
Hold on all the appointments?
I would, I mean, are they active right now? Can they hold meetings? or- They're all,
Well, that's a dilemma, because if they all had one-year terms, right now, unless we reappoint, the committee's dormant,
Yeah.
if those dates are correct.
So
If they went on a
you
calendar.
still have
their
majority
appointments.
members, even without those two appointments, so you could, and those two, there's no question about the other appointments in terms of their time.
Okay, so the
So you can
appointment
still
was
appoint-
done on December.
It expired,
Yeah.
2014. It was at that meeting.
On the November 26, 2013 meeting, the Board of Selectmen appointed the following individuals with an expiration date of 12/31/2014. That's what the town clerk's letter says. And then in the bylaw, it says, in addition, the Board of Selectmen shall make any appointment necessary to fill the unexpired term of a vacated position. Any member may be reappointed after one term has elapsed since the expiration of their most recent term. So that's why the one-year people, according to this, could not be reappointed.
Isn't there language sometimes when you start a committee that, you have your initial committee and then going, and you say like, as far as reappointments going forward, so that you could still, you could still reappoint Linda and Bob to the next 1 year? Am I wrong on that? Sometimes they have language like that?
I'll agree with it to get them back
No,
on the
no,
committee.
no.
It's unfortunate, because this
It
was
is.
the
And
newest committee, and it's,
And it could be just the way that
Yeah.
it was
Yeah,
written.
and they're
without
passionate
considering-
members too, so.
well, they're doing a
Yeah.
ton of work, and
It
they're
talks
they're meeting
about-
this
It
week.
talks about the
understand,
two
yeah.
one-year people, one member at large who shall serve for an initial term of 1 year, one member from a related private educational or social institution who shall serve for an initial term of 1 year. And then it goes on to say that they have to wait for that. It's too bad that it can't be the 3-year people who elapse and have to wait a term, not the 1-year people.
Because when we were signing the 100-plus ones that we did at the end of the year, I think, because this was the newest committee, it just wasn't on that list. And they brought it up to me afterwards, and
Well, I think in the interest of keeping the committee going, I think there's a mechanical flaw in the way we put it together. But I think we should appoint everyone else and figure out how we're going to reappoint Linda Walsh and Bob Korea.
Well, can we, as a selectman, override and,
Override a bylaw?
well, to make it an emergency? Yeah, I mean, is that something?
I don't know.
I don't know about that.
But I mean, I just don't want to see this committee go dormant
Right.
while we're trying to figure it out.
Right. It would be those 2 one-year positions right now that would be
The
in
only
question.
Yeah.
Well, could we, right now, create 2 additional positions?
You'd be expanding the scope of the committee.
The bylaw says it has to have 7.
There lies the challenge with the
And
bylaw.
even, yeah, well, even if it, under the category that, I mean, it was a mistake that they weren't appointed with 99% of the other people that were appointed.
We'll have to ask. We can ask.
Yeah.
I just don't.
But I mean, until we get the answers to that to
I
solve
think,
it.
I think
so-
that
I think we
the
should-
willingness is there, it's just that I don't know that you can do that.
Yeah.
But I'd say let's appoint everyone else and figure out
Yes.
how to,
I would.
Yeah.
how to correct that
Yeah,
problem.
that's
To
fine.
keep it
So-
going.
So Deb Spinelli, Jeff Downs, Bill Dudley, Vicky Lowe.
And Tim O'Leary.
Yeah.
Okay, so then my original
Motion
motion
stands.
is
Well,
back again.
Having said that, Tim O'Leary has been promoted, and we have a new youth officer. I'm sorry.
Azevedo, Officer
Yeah.
Azevedo.
In the discussion with them today, they may want to switch that. So
You can appoint, but he can always withdraw.
yeah, see, it kind of caught me by surprise, because they had a 3-year term, so I didn't think we would be discussing reappointing, because we're only a year into it, and he had 2 more years. So to reappoint him for another year where somebody may be more appropriate, I don't know what that committee wanted to do with that position. Because the youth officer is the one that should be working with the Child Safety Committee.
Well, can you appoint the youth officer without a name?
I haven't spoken.
Well,
Whoever the incumbent youth officer is, can you appoint that
I mean,
position?
what could happen is that you appoint the person there, and then as soon as they withdraw, then you appoint a new person to fill the.
Because the bylaw allows us.
Yes.
Okay,
Mhm.
gotcha.
Emergency appointment.
Okay.
You know, so you want to go ahead with that?
Sure.
Just, I don't want it to go dormant.
You're
Yeah,
appointing
yeah,
the
yeah.
category. It's the category that's important. You follow me here? Because you're appointing the person in the category.
Right, but it has to be a named person. You can't appoint a
Right,
position.
so if you appoint someone into the category right now, and then they withdraw because they're no longer going to be serving in that position, you can appoint somebody to fill that category.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Right.
so my motion,
I'll second your motion, Jenny.
okay.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Next is an acceptance of a gift donation for a free floral arrangement class from Epic Assisted Living in Norton, Mass. The value is about $100, and it was, it's for the Council on Aging. I don't know the paperwork. So I move that the Board of Selectmen accept the donation of value of $100 made to the Council on Aging from the Epic Assisted Living in Norton to be used for a floral arrangement class for the seniors at the Council on Aging.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
The next one is the Foxborough J.C.'s are asking for approval for a 5K run on March 14th, 2015, from 7 a.m. to 12 noon. It's starting and stopping at the South Foxborough Community Center. So I make a motion that we approve that. It has all the approvals from police, public safety, and DPW.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye. That's it.
That's it.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, good night.